There's a copy of the agenda bank there. Our procedures are a little bit more informal with our work sessions. We generally don't make binding decisions except to give direction to staff, mostly an opportunity for a little bit more informal discussion. Our topic tonight is the upcoming budget, and tomorrow night we will have another one of these meetings, same time and place. Before we go to public comment on any item on the agenda or not, Chris, do you have anything in the way of preliminaries?
I just have one. Katie and I didn't get to talk about this, but I'd heard through the grapevine, though she is extremely interested in learning everything about our budget process and each budget, if the council wants to change the order and do the business improvement district first, she'd really appreciate that. But that's totally your guys' call, and I didn't get a chance to ask you that, Mayor. So other than that, and you already stated, we're here tonight and tomorrow night, same time, same place. Thank you.
Thank you. And I do note that on item number 2, the bid is the last of the bulleted items. I think under our ordinance, I actually can control the agenda on a work session. I could be wrong about that, but I think that's the case. So unless somebody objects when we get to item number 2, I think we'd need to stick with item number 1, the overview first. But once we get to item number 2, I'll flip the bid to the first bullet unless anybody objects to that. Okay, so that'll be the plan. This is an opportunity for public comment on any item. We'll have a chance for public comment on item 1 and item 2 later. But if you need to go, please feel free to comment on those items or something not on your agenda. Is there anything in the way of public comment at this time? We just ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes and tell us your name and address. Any public comment at this time? No one's coming to the podium, so we'll close the public comment period and move into first item, which is our fiscal year 26 budget overview. Our finance director, Andy Zeller, is going to kick that off, I'm assuming, unless, Chris, you had anything in the way of introductions. Okay, so Andy, it's
all right. Yours. I expected more from Chris to start, but that's a all right. Well, good evening, Mayor and Council. I guess I'll start with thanking you for allowing me to push this back. It's been a interesting budget year so far with all the legislation. So, but we're in it now. So, start off with just some highlights. Obviously, we're in New City Hall. That was a big deal, very large accomplishment this year. There's a much more robust list at the front of your budget book, which I'll pause there. I meant to say I have 3 printed versions right now. I can get more. If anybody wants a printed version, they're right here. One for Scott. Okay, so send me an email if you would like a printed version, and I will have one printed for you. Apparently I have more than 3. So I was told I only had 3. So I hope those are budget books and magic, I guess. Yeah. Okay. So anyway, yeah, we've got those. I appreciate your helpfulness on that. Completed some SEPTEB projects in North Park. That was that a budget allocation, I think, from 24 that went into 25. A lot of work at the cemetery to replace damaged veterans' headstones and then put in some flower pots for protective measures as well. So the FY26 budget, as currently proposed, is $457 million in revenue, and the majority of that in charges for services. If you've been through our budget process before, you're familiar with that. What I'll do here is I'm giving you obviously a very high level overview, and then we'll kind of go through what each of these revenue line items mean and what makes up the bulk of the revenue, and then same with the expenses. But total budgeted revenue at 457 and total budgeted expense at 438. Here you see the budgeted expenses, a slight increase in personnel. We'll go through that. O&M's pretty flat, actually, overall at the city. And then capital's down quite a bit. And that's largely due to the nature of capital items don't occur year over year. And last year we had a good portion of the West End Reservoir in there. So here's the breakdown by the numbers. again, same as the previous slides. The largest portion of our budget being charges for services. Those typically are utilities, and then airport fees, kind of that sort of stuff, property taxes, special assessments, making up the bulk of the remainder. So some of the major capital projects in this year's budget is kind of the initial ramp up of the storm sewer investments. There's planned debt for that project, and then to kick off some of those. Portion of Rimrock Road, continuing safe routes to schools, and an airport remodel for the front counter baggage claim area. And then this budget includes the Amon Park Rec Campus. That's consistent with the CIP. I think there's going to be an adjustment made there where it'll come out of the 26 budget, and you'll do an amendment to put it in the 25 budget because they're underway and part of that contract has already been bid. But at the time we were putting the capital projects together, it was part of the CIP. So it's in there currently, but I would anticipate that we'll bring a recommendation for a change there. Operations and maintenance cost, as I indicated, they're largely flat overall at the city. There are some areas that we're continuing to see some large increases. 20% increase in property insurance, and Carla will go more into that. The following slide, I have some more information on insurance. We have budgeted 2 citywide elections, one for a primary and one for a general this year. Some increased building and equipment maintenance costs, and that's, again, this is across the city. These are in our fire department, I think our wastewater, and the airport, I believe, is where the large focus area is there. And then software costs and subscription costs continue to trend up year over year. I think once they get you, they've got you forever on those.
Andy, the piece I would add would be on the positive side. We did bid workman's comp, and that came in with about a $400,000 savings. So that was a significant adjustment to the positive, as work comp, liability, and property insurance have been double-digit increases year over year over year for the past several years. That was a positive component moving from MMIA over to the state fund for work comp. So,
thanks, Chris. Forgot about that. So this chart here, I've had it in the past for you as well. I mean, if you own a home, it's no secret. Insurance costs, or a vehicle, I suppose, the insurance costs are going up rapidly. And that's no different here at the city. Our liability insurance since 2019 has more than doubled. Same with our property insurance. It's actually gone up, 4 times there. So we've seen these large increases for quite a few years now. We do have an outside entity that helps shop it every year for us, making sure we're getting good market rates, but that's what the market appears to be. So. Personal services make up about 28% of the total spend this year. The recommendation here is about it's a $4.7 million increase over the prior year. It's about 4% overall. That includes salary and wage increases, both contracted and recommended. There's 7 additional FTE in the budget, and then an estimated increase in health insurance costs. I'll go into it a little bit later, but we were here, a few weeks ago to talk about property tax bills and kind of what direction we wanted to go. And there are positions that we're recommending being held vacant. I mean, they're still authorized positions, but there's no dollars budgeted for them this year. And I'll go through those in a bit, but that's how that works out right now. The 7 new FTEs, there are 2 police officers. One is grant funded, the DUI officer, and then the other one is a replacement for the court officer. So every judge has the right and ability to request a court officer. And now that we have, 2 judges, we have 2 court officers. And so PD is requesting to refill that patrol officer with the one they pulled off and put into a court officer. And then there are 5 FTE in public works, 3 in the stormwater, 1 in solid waste for yard waste, and then 1 in admin. That's a IT dedicated position. So it's public works / IT, but that's where the focus of that position will be. In earlier versions, we had FTEs in here for facilities. That was going to be to maintain this building, but with the approval of the custodial contract, the FTEs have been removed, but the expense to clean the building's still there, obviously. And then we'll go through the budgeted revenue areas. So again, charges for services, we have external charges and internal charges. External charges, familiar, got a good list there, but utility bills, rec programs, our BUFSA charge to the county that lives there. And then internal, we have charges to other departments. So fleet maintenance, facilities, we charge a cost allocation charge for general admin, that'd be for HR, finance, administration, to all departments as well in there. And then our internal health insurance, since we're self-funded, we account for our health insurance fund there as well. Property tax revenue, you guys have heard a lot about that this year. The total budget includes $64 million in property tax revenue. 55 of that is our mill generated areas, general fund, public safety, et cetera. The remainder are your 3 TIF districts. We have some personal property that we get as well. There's an estimated $100,000 increase there, although that number you never really know until the end of the next fiscal year. We get a small portion of motor vehicle tax as well from the county. And we have the marijuana excise tax. I think it's $625,000. $200,000 of that is going towards the city hall debt payment, and then the remainder to the Public Safety Crime Prevention Fund. And if you recall, when we went forward with buying this building and moving on the construction contract, council had committed to over 5 years putting $1 million into the construction and or what is now debt service on that. So this would be I believe the 3rd year of that. Yeah, it's the 3rd or 4th year, I don't recall, but it's not the last year. 26 is not the last year of that. The property tax mill levy, what we're projecting right now is that the estimated median home value will be $350,000, but the value of a mill through the tax legislation that was signed by the governor this weekend is projected to decrease by 16%. As a result, the value of a mill is going down. The cost to the median home is going down as well. The projected total number of mills that will need to be levied to maintain 0% new revenue is 247.23 mills. We won't know exactly what that number is until August when we get what the true certified value of a mill is, but it's probably pretty close at this point. That's an increase of almost 40 mills over the current year. This slide here just shows property tax revenue projected for FY26. The requirement from the state law is that you shall levy the amount of tax revenue billed in fiscal year 25. So I should clarify, for those mills that are in the charter. So the top 5 there, those are your charter mills. There's no increase in tax revenue for the city in any of those funds. And then the only 2 that we're showing an increase are the 2 general obligation debt service mills, and you have to levy what the debt payment is on those, and they're right around $765,000 a year. That's a good question. And it was asked at Budget and Finance. I don't remember the answer at this point in time, but I will. I'll get you an answer. There's probably 4 to 7 years left on each of them. I know we've refinanced both of them at their 10-year mark, and they were 20-year bonds. So I'm going to say there's probably one that has 4 years left, and the other one has about 7 or 8. But yeah, how much total debt, I don't recall. But I'll get you an answer.
Andy, isn't the normally the debt, doesn't that normally go down as far as,
So the total number of mills usually historically had gone down. The total debt payment is relatively flat, right? We try to borrow level debt service. It's easier for budgeting, better for taxpayers because you don't have big spikes in payments or anything like that. So the payment's usually right around $760,000. It is not like your mortgage where it is truly flat, but it's pretty close. The number of mills typically went down because the value of a mill went up. And so year over year, we'd levy fewer mills. But because the value of a mill is going down, the number of mills, I'll go back to that previous one, the number of mills will have to go up. And here we're showing it's going to go up 1.4 mills.
yeah, no, I understand the number
But-
of mills is going to go up, but what I'm looking at here is if the library bonds were paid last year, and they typically can be the same dollar amount, it's 73,000 last year, and now it's 767, which happens to be exactly the same amount as Geo Park bond, which is 746 last year. How is the debt service going up if we're not adding new debt to it?
So again, the debt service payment isn't perfectly level. It's they vary slightly, and I can get you the debt service schedules, but they're right around $750,000 per year. But they do fluctuate based upon the schedules that were set up when we issued the bonds. And I think this year they're within a couple $1,000s of each other. So when we estimate what you need to levy to make that debt payment, we start in, well, March or so. We'll take and we'll say, all right, what's the current cash balance in these funds? How much do we have in taxes receivable? And we know we don't collect 100% of taxes receivable. Make a projection. I think 92% of that's going to get collected. Pull out the next debt payment. What are we going to start cash with? And then what do you need to levy to make that debt payment? And
Okay,
yeah,
I understand. Thank you.
and then again, try to maintain a very, very minimal cash balance in there. Obviously, we don't need anything but for debt payments there. So back in April, we had a proposed budget that was balanced, assuming a 4% growth in tax revenue. After the state laws changed, we had to go back and make adjustments. Obviously talked with all of you about that, and we had to reduce about 2.3 million out of our tax supported funds. And the recommendation is to remove the funding for a few positions that have been previously approved, and then also remove the funding for some specific programs. So here, and I apologize, this slide was not in the one that was attached, so I'll send this back out to you guys as well, so you all have that. But we're recommending, again, maintaining the authorized staffing on, as an approved position, but there's no money allocated for these positions. That's budget analyst and grants admin out of finance, PIO out of legal, or out of admin, 2 legal positions, the assistant fire chief, 2 PD support positions, and an animal control officer. We also included some vacancy savings for the police department. They typically do not see 100% staffing. We start our budget process by budgeting 100% staffed in all positions, and then when we're going to balance the budget, looking at areas where, okay, they're not always staffed here, they're not always staffed there, pull out some of it. And in police, traditionally they do not spend 100% in their wages, and the recommendation is to take in total 500,000 of vacancy savings there. We had 300 in there originally, and there's an additional 200 to get the total 2.3 million.
How many positions is that in the police department?
So So it's not actually removing any, well, there's the 2 support staff positions. And then, as Andy said, on what we anticipate to be, for lack of a better term, vacancy savings, that is not reducing the commitment to hire, if the number is 177 sworn officers, we're not slowing down or backing off of that number. It just is a reality that there will not be 177 sworn officers from July 1st to June 30th. So this tries to estimate that.
We talked about in the budget meeting that was 10 positions of vacancy savings, okay? If it's 10 positions of vacancy savings, that's the overhead you showed us before. If that's the case, where the heck are we going to find the dollars for those 10 positions for next year if we're going to be $1 million, $1.5 million short? So by saying, those positions don't go away, we just don't have the money and we're going to use the money this year to run, I have a problem with this, because what you're doing looks okay, and if we ever get the money, we'll be able to do it. But looking over the next couple years, I don't see us backfilling those positions.
So I guess I want to make sure we clarify the difference between 10 and what I would say is $500,000 in round numbers is 5 positions. But again, I wanted to make the point that we're not reducing 5 FTEs. I continue to authorize overhiring. You can just look at the fiscal year over year and know that you won't have them on permanently. I'm sorry, go ahead, Andy.
I think perhaps some of the confusion, I had a slide, I think at one point, of total current vacant positions, and in PD at that time, I think they had 15, 16 vacant positions. That might be what you're referring to, Councilmember Kennedy. And the thought here, at least from me, is throughout the year there will be on average over the year 5 vacant positions. They're still working through hiring. I think I don't know where they're at right now, but they had at that time, I think, 10 in backgrounds. But statistically, they don't see 100% of those make it to employment. So I think we'll be looking for police officers all year long, even with the 500,000 vacancy savings.
But we never did fill those positions this year.
So I think, Councilmember Kennedy, you absolutely are correct that at the time at which we can staff up and be staffed the entire fiscal year, we would be under this proposed budget. We'd need to come up with another $500,000 to cover that salary deficiency, because based on experience, we've reduced it by that number. So if we're ever fortunate enough to be there at the sworn number for 365 days, we would need in that next year's budget cycle to add $500,000 based on what we've put together. Now, in 7 years in Billings and the 13 in Bozeman, you can count it in weeks, not even months, how any police department, for the most part in this country, is fully staffed all 365 days a year. So I think it ends up being just an equation of looking at what will the actual spend be. And like I said, we authorize overhiring. We don't drag our feet and slow hire in order to save money. We don't see vacancy savings anywhere in the criminal justice system as a positive, with the exception of this year needing to shave this 2.3 and what we needed to do in the prosecution area and a couple other areas.
So the question I have then, Chris, on this budget, if we find $500,000, then we will go ahead and try to fill those 5 positions, correct?
We're trying to fill those 5 positions. We don't need the $500,000 to fill the 5 positions. What I'm saying is,
I think we're playing a shell game here.
however the council wants us to approach it, but that is what we're trying to do here is the net effect is not cut some other budget area so that on paper, we've got this additional money in police payroll that we just know from experience won't get spent. And
But Chris, I think Councilman Kennedy acknowledges the difficulty of doing that. So probably for this year, we won't be successful. But there's the theoretical possibility that we might become the really attractive place and be flooded with all these applications, right? So the question is, in that theoretical possibility, as unlikely as that might be, would we be without money because we've taken the anticipated $500,000 of vacancy savings and committed those someplace else, and now we don't have the 500,000?
I think the answer is yes, under that theoretical scenario. And since we've got monthly budget and finance committee meetings and a quarterly report, I think we kind of learned the hard way a couple of years ago with what happened in the fire department, where we were over. We're much closer paying attention to that. So we'd have good news. We'd come to budget finance, say we got good news and bad news. The good news is we're fully staffed. Bad news is we're going to be over budget if we stay on this projection. So we'd propose some kind of a budget amendment to cover that shortfall. Again, I think the probability of that is slim to none, but that's how it would work from a practical standpoint. We wouldn't wait until the end of the year, and we wouldn't say don't hire if they've got the qualified candidates to hire. We'd authorize them to hire.
So what I'm hearing is a commitment to keep us posted on that hiring process and to keep trying to find somebody to fill all those positions, and then come back to us, as you just specifically said, with an update on the budget if needed. So,
Yes.
Okay. All right.
Andy?
Councilmember Denise?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Andy, this is, like you say, this is new information, and I don't want to take away from this because this is just a general overview, but I do have some more questions specifically about some of these positions. We'll be addressing these at a later time on the specific departments that they affect.
I don't see why not. Yeah, we haven't told them directly to talk about it, but we certainly can.
Yeah, I don't want to get sidetracked on the overview. I'd like to have you keep going on the overview, but I would like to make sure we address these issues as they affect each of the departments.
Absolutely. Any of these vacancies or program changes. So when the parks budget's presented, we'll talk about what this impact is and any of these FTEs that the balancing required to leave vacant. Yes, we can address those with each particular budget to understand the impacts, because there are impacts of any and all of these.
I'll hold my questions till then. Thank you.
Okay. Go ahead, Andy, then.
Okay, and I won't read them all on the right there. Those were some either newly requested positions or programs and or some just reductions to balance the remainder of the budget. I will note that a large portion of the 2.3 million came from our transfer to parks, so you will hear more about that. 700,000. Does that sound right? Yeah, from the to parks, a reduction. So,
Andy, can we get a copy of that?
Yeah, I'll send this out to you guys afterwards.
Okay, because I didn't get the ones from last week at our budget meeting.
Okay, I sent those out, but I'll make sure you get it.
Yeah,
Yep.
I'd like the ones that you showed us
Mhm.
at the budget meeting.
I think I sent. Oh, okay. Yep. All right, so the next category is intergovernmental revenue. That means revenue from other governments. And in this case, it's the state of Montana or the federal government. The city of Billings, we get about almost 19 million in total state entitlement share, 4.5 million in gas tax, and then 1.1 million for our EOC 911. That's a fee that everybody pays on their cell phone bill. There's a slight increase. Traditionally, state entitlement share goes up 2.5% to 3.5% per year. And our 911 fee has been relatively flat, actually, for quite a few years. A small area, but I think something that will eventually have to be addressed, as that revenue doesn't typically go up very much. And I think gas tax, I believe, is about a $100,000 increase this year. And in our federal intergovernmental revenue, we actually have a large reduction. We had last year some large one-time grants. It was, I think, kind of the final ARPA grants that were flowing out through the FAA and, well, to other various projects. But we had some in our water department as well as airport. And so we're actually seeing a net reduction there. The bulk of our federal funding goes to the airport and then to transit. Those are our two largest areas. So the general fund and public safety, each year I show you this slide to kind of show you where we're at revenue and expense wise. They are largely interdependent on each other, and therefore I think it makes sense to combine them for at least the purposes of this discussion, that we make sure, one, we've got a balanced budget there, and two, we're monitoring our fund balance in those funds. A slight decrease this year of 1.2 million. I'll note that last year, council authorized paying off the Evidence Center expansion debt. That was right around $2 million. We used South TIF funds, and in order to cause that to occur, the way that worked was a transfer from South TIF into our public safety fund where the debt was paid out of. So that's why there's a $3 million reduction in the transfer in. Yeah, I'll have to double check that. I know that number is right. I just don't, I was thinking it was 2 million, but perhaps it was 3. I'll double check and make sure I'm not giving you wrong information. But that's the bulk of the reduction. Again, seeing modest increases elsewhere, and then the tax revenue from the previous slides, there's small expected increases in the motor vehicle and potentially personal property, but the real property tax revenue is remaining flat. And here's the expense side by department, and you'll see a lot of reductions there. One big one probably stands out, a reduction in PD of 1.9 million. Again, that was the transfer in. The debt service payment was attributed to the police department. We paid it off. We're not paying it off again, so the total budget does go down because of that debt service payment from last year. Other reductions are a result of some of those positions being held vacant for the year as well. So in the general fund and public safety fund combined, where are we spending our money? Again, the bulk of it there, you guys have seen police and fire department. The next largest portion is the transfer to the parks department, which is entirely out of the general fund now. And then legal, municipal court, and then city admin kind of making up those other areas. But the vast majority of our tax dollars going to police and fire and other public safety services. So those of you who've been on council for a while have seen this slide and may remember it, but in this represents the revenue and expense. Those are the two lines up top there. The red line is expense, green line revenue, and right now we have a proposed budget that is balanced. And if there are changes that are desired in order to maintain a balanced budget, we will need equal and offsetting reductions elsewhere. So that, just be aware of that. The blue bar at the bottom, that represents total fund balance. Giving you some historical look. We had historically been adding to fund balance slowly over time, and a big portion of it was used to acquire and outfit this building we're in now. The purple mark is the recommended minimum fund balance. We are slowly adding to it each year, but that's a result of departments not spending 100% of their budget. So any unspent funds that are collected and not used get added to reserves. And that's how we built such large reserves in the past, and it slowly is happening again. The projection right now is that we will have fund balance in the general fund and public safety of about, I believe it's 1.7 or 1.9 million. That is solely a result of unspent funds from the prior, really 24 and estimated 25. Again, there's not budgeted additions to reserves. I think I have it at $1 this year. So but essentially it's not budgeted. So
Yeah,
again,
Andy, if I can ask you a question about that recommended fund reserve. My recollection is that that number, 13% or whatever it is, based on a formula that had been adopted by policy, either by the council or administratively, but that your position had been the last few years that it was too low, and that you'd like to see us add to that. A, do I have that right? And B, how do I, or how does this projected 1.7 to 1.9 compare to whatever you were hoping to get in your perfect world where you sleep better at night?
back in 2021, it was really good. That's, but yes, you have that right. The recommended minimum reserve is 29% of the annual general fund expenditure minus capital. So that works out.
29%, I apologize. I said
Yep, that's
13%.
okay.
I don't know where I got that. So
Well,
I was
it works
way off.
out to about 13 million. So maybe that's where you got 13 from. But yeah, so right now that's usually been around 12 to 13 million each year. And yes, you're correct. The reason for that is our two largest payments come in December and June of each year. That's the tax payments. We have to be able to cash flow for the other 6 months. Our state entitlement share comes in quarterly, so that helps smooth it out a little bit. But everything else is pretty small relatively and comes in throughout the year. But in order to cash flow public safety primarily, we need to have a minimum fund balance. And at that 29% mark, we do run negative cash in May, typically, and a little bit in November, right before those tax payments are received. We run, and I'll clarify again, we run negative cash in the general fund, not at the city. So we have to do internal borrowing in order to make that, make everything, well, no checks bounce. It is good practice that every fund is able to largely stand alone on its own without, needing internal loans. So the recommendation is, yes, that you increase that. I think it's 33% was the recommendation. So it's not a huge increase, but it is something more than 29.
So Andy, how short are we on that then?
Like today?
No, I mean this budget. How short is the budget on that 33%?
Oh, to get to 33%?
Yeah. And as the council adopted that 33%?
Well, yeah, it was part of your.
It was part of the goals and objectives. So if you look under the high performance organization, I think it is the last objective is to move that number to the goal of 33%.
Did we have a timeline on it?
It's a 5-year plan, so.
Okay.
So a 33% minimum fund balance would get you to about, you need to add about another 2 million. So you're not terribly far off. I would think, historically speaking, you'd probably be there at the end of 26. Just because, again, I don't anticipate 100% budget spend, but with the reductions that we've had to make, and then knowing we're going to have less tax revenue, that may be different.
Okay, so we should get there by the end of the 5 year.
We should be getting close, and I will say unequivocally, it is the minimum fund balance. It is not even $50 more. Like, yeah. I'd like to get to 35, but you guys were good at 33, so
Okay,
that
thank
works.
you.
But yeah.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Yep. I have this slide in here. We've been doing this one for the past couple of years. This is the Crime Prevention Fund. With the 2021 Public Safety Levy, there were some dollars committed specific towards crime prevention, mental health, substance abuse. The funds that go into that fund are the remainder of our marijuana tax revenue. There's the 2 mills for the property tax, from the property tax mill levy. There's opioid settlement revenue that came from the lawsuits against all of the pharmaceutical companies, and we get a small portion of that. We really don't know how much is coming because there's been multiple settlements, and so they just kind of send me an email and say, hey, you're about to get a wire. And most of them are going to be over about I think a 12 to 15 year term. So we've been putting them in there. They're supposed to go towards programs that help address the issues that were related to substance abuse. The fire department has been successful at getting some grants for the crisis response units. That's the grant revenue. And then the other revenue is almost all interest income. So that's what makes up the revenue in those funds. I have the actuals from the time of inception in 2023 through budgeted and then projected out one more year. You guys have used those funds for those programs that I've identified there. Crisis response units, Family Justice Center, Nurse Family Partnership, and the final payment of the short-term hold facility. That's what's budgeted for fiscal year 26. We are showing, I think a year ago, I had the same slide and we were very low fund balance here. You may be wondering what happened. Well, we got in more opioid revenue than we had anticipated. I think we've budgeted $65,000 most years, and you see in 24 we got $265,000, and then this year I'm estimating $138,000, and that's primarily based upon what we've received year to date. So pretty confident we'll get at least $125,000. So we've gotten some more revenue in that fund, and I think in 2024 you guys had budgeted some funds for Family Justice Center and Nurse Family Partnership that did not get fully used. So that's why the fund balance is higher than what some of you may recall from a year ago. But good news, we're budgeted and projected to have a positive fund balance there. So with the changes in the property tax bill, you guys you have not made final decision on utility rates yet, right, Debbie? I think that's later this month, but you did provide some direction on or some recommendations on how you'd like to see the budget built. We have taken that into account for this budget as well. And so what's the typical or median home in Billings going to experience if the budget were approved and adopted with the corresponding rates to support this budget? That's what this slide represents. So because of the tax law changes, even with the increasing mills, the median home in Billings will realize a $205 reduction in their City of Billings property tax bill. That's only the City Billings portion. The remainder and the bulk of your property tax bill is the school district, then the city, then the county, and the state. I don't know what the results of the tax bill and changes will be for those other entities, but presumably they'll also experience a decrease there as well. And that's the median home at $350,000. Then the utility bill, the average monthly utility bill is projected to go up $2 per month for the average home, and that is solely related to a recommended increase in the storm sewer charge. All other utility rates for the residential home remaining flat.
So Andy, just want to emphasize it just in case the media is paying attention. 0, 0, 0. No increase in water for residents, wastewater for residents, solid waste for residents. Storm sewer was the one relative to implementing the storm sewer program with the literally, what would it be, 7, 8, 9 figures of capital that needs to be done there, that plan is moving forward. And though it was reported that big increases are coming, there are no increases to 3 of the 4, and the one I think is a pretty modest increase. So sorry, just trying to emphasize that point. And yes, the letters did point out what the slight increase may be for a year from now. So thank you.
All right. There was a discussion, I believe at the work session, I know at Budget and Finance Committee, about how to present on the Billings portion of your tax bill, the charter mill levies, the GO bonds, and then this mandatory statutory adjustment. I, at this point, have no opinion or preference on either one, but I wanted to just show you what that would look like. On the left would be proportionately grossing up all of the charter mill levies to generate the exact same revenue in 26 as 25. Again, you arrive at 247 mills. The other option there in the gray box was that I think council sounds like it's probably going to consider is keeping the mills at the charter max and then adding something that says, statutory requirement or statutory amount, whatever, raising to be determined, but that would be where the 37.45 mills would show up. I believe on your property tax bill, it just shows the total dollar amount by type. It doesn't show total mills, but you get the idea. This is what the tax bill for the median home then would look like in either of those scenarios. On the left, just your standard general fund, public safety, transit, library, and then you have the 2 GO bonds and then street maintenance. Or if you added that statutory amount language, it would look like the one on the right in the gray. That decision doesn't need to be made until the night that you set the mills. Obviously, we can have discussions about that going forward, but you arrive at the same total mills and total dollar point at the end of the day.
So at least our staff plan is to draw them up, the resolution, then for budget adoption, unless you give us clear direction before then on a decision. I think, am I describing right, Andy? We would show them to you both ways, and you would decide that evening which way you want it to, which resolution to approve, which is what will get forwarded on to the county and to the state setting it.
Chris, will we have an opportunity in a work session to kind of kick around the impacts of those?
Yeah, I would say this, this overview night tonight, and then I would say anytime between now and the final budget discussion, that would be good if the council wants to kick around what are the pros and cons or whatnot. But to be clear, from a staff perspective, Andy and I, there's pros and cons to both of these, and it's not, we don't have a strong feeling which way it should be. It really is the preference of the board and what you want to set up for the future. So.
Okay, thanks.
And Andy, when's the deadline for that? It's not until much in like September or something like that.
You guys will be asked to set the mills at your last regular meeting in August at this point.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
And then speaking just about procedure, the draft budget that we're seeing here now, there will not be any more changes made to that or not anticipated. It'd be any changes that to be made would be via amendments brought forward by council members preferably through the amendment process that we have lined out. You still have to make the motion on the floor And it's much better chances of getting passed if you've filled out the form and both staff and your fellow council members have had a chance to look at it in advance. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah, I have it on this slide here. So, so this is my last slide. The full budget is available online for anybody who wants to access it. billingsmt.gov/finance, and I think you click on annual budgets and it's there. You have work session tonight, tomorrow, then June 2nd and June 3rd. The recommendation from Budget and Finance as well as staff this year is to do a preliminary budget adoption on June 23rd and then do final adoption on August 25th, which would be that last regular meeting in August when you would also set the mills. The amendment process, similar to the past few years, I did email you all today both the link to the folder that has everybody's budget amendment form, as well as I sent to each of you individually a link that you can use to edit your own. So you'll be able to view all council members' budget amendment forms, but you can only edit your own. And they will be included with the packet at preliminary budget adoption. Presumably, if there are additional ones that come forth in the month of July and August, we would add those and include them with the final adoption in August. I would expect there to be 1 or 2 recommended budget amendments from myself, in particular the Amen Rec campus being one. But yeah, at this point, any changes to the proposed budget would come as motion on adoption night.
Something else, Chris, before you?
Last thing, I just want to make sure, so Councilmember Kennedy, make sure we don't have something wrong on our end. At 4:01 Thursday is when the email should have came from Andy. I just forwarded it a couple of minutes ago, so you should have one from me forwarding it.
I have one from you now,
Okay.
but it doesn't open.
Okay.
I've got 2 from Andy, but not the budget one.
We can work on that after words or at a break. Okay, council, we've had some good opportunities back and forth, but more questions. Councilmember Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. Andy, not that we're going to make money on fines and forfeitures, but I thought because we had 2 judges, we would see a slight increase in the fines. We're actually seeing a decrease in fines. How did you arrive at those figures?
So fines and forfeiture revenue, traditionally just kind of look at historical trends over the past couple of years and try to make adjustments. That makes sense. We have not seen a material increase in fines and forfeiture revenue. As to why that is, I think the judges explained it. I don't recall what the answer was, but I think something along the lines of, yeah, they're seeing more cases, but it's a lot of the same familiar faces, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah, I think, Andy, you're hitting it, that when we talked about that when they presented their budgets, that maybe getting the same group of people through a little faster, but the ability to pay or what gets paid is not necessarily, it's not necessarily, it literally, at this point, we're not seeing an increase. I think it's a question and a conversation, I think, to continue to follow as we look at this transition where 90 days into running, 2 full courts in this building, whereas in the old building, there was still a lot of sharing and things of that nature. But I do think that's an area in the criminal justice system, as was stated, we never look at it as a revenue producing component. And yet you do, if we're running more things through the court, isn't there any kind of an adjustment there? And we'd welcome to ask the judges to and the court clerk to attend their budget presentation, be prepared to have a conversation about that and how it may also fit into a conversation with law enforcement and or a conversation with the prosecutor's office. All three work together in the system.
I think there's general agreement. We probably should be charging market rate fines, whatever those are, and looking into it. I know in Bozeman, a certain somebody might have gotten a parking ticket in Bozeman over the weekend for $23.50. So that's the market over in Bozeman anyway. Council member Aspinwall?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. One of the things I think we should consider or talk about too is license and permit fees. You know, our business license fee has been unchanged for quite some time, and it's I think $100 to get a business license. Yeah, 50. Okay, yeah, even worse to my point. Yeah, again, not that that's a giant revenue generator, but you know, we should be probably more than $50 to get a business license and process that in the city of Billings. Again, that's not making up any kind of budget shortfall or anything like that, but we should certainly be looking at an increase of our business license fee in Billings as well.
On that, we've got what, $2 million budgeted in license and permits. Our business license fee, I'm going to say, brings in about $700,000 a year. The remainder there, just so you guys are aware, that is the cable franchise fee that cable subscribers pay, and we collect and primarily use for Community 7. But that's what makes up that $2 million. So it's not $2 million in business licenses, but noted.
Okay, Councilmember Neese, Councilmember Ripsis?
Thank you, Mayor. I agree with what Scott has said about the fees. I know it's not a lot, but there's lots of little fees within their city. We need to make sure that we are keeping up to market rate on those. But a couple of things is, I am concerned a little bit about the police support that we're not going to fulfill because officers can't do their job if they don't have the support. So I want to make sure we revisit that when the time comes. But Andy, you've said this a couple of times now, and I just want to caution us that we're not misleading the public on, even though our tax burden on the property tax is going to come down to 205. What I understand, and I'm not expert on this law that just passed, but other government agencies that are not like us in city charter can just float their mills, and they're going to fund their budgets what they need to do, and so they probably will not be seeing a decrease in their property taxes. But I could be wrong on that, but I sure wouldn't want to mislead the public thinking that we're going to see a tax reduction in school and a tax reduction in the county. But I just don't know. I know what we can do in the city here. We're going to see a $205 reduction plus another 25 increase in stormwater.
So statewide, the Department of Revenue estimated that I believe it was the median home, this is statewide broad generalizations, would see about an 18% reduction in their property tax bill when all jurisdictions were layered on top of that. So I think the expectation is that there should be property tax reduction for your median home, but to what extent in Yellowstone County and Billings and School District 2, I don't know the answer to that.
And Councilmember Neese, my prediction is that you're right, that those other taxing jurisdictions will increase their mills to make sure that their income is consistent with what they were expecting or past. But the good news for residential property owners is the mix that'll make up is their share will be less. So they will see a significant tax decrease. It's Northwestern Energy and a few of the other larger
Right, a lot of the businesses are going to see a bigger
will
increase.
make up the difference.
Yeah.
Hey, Andy. I'm sorry, Councilmember Ripsis.
Thank you, Mayor. Andy, can you help me, slides 19 and 20, philosophically, why is parks now non-departmental? I mean, we have police and fire, they also get transfers from the general fund. Why are we treating parks as a non-department now?
Thank you for the question. So when in the general fund by itself, everything is, when I say by itself, not including the public safety fund, not combined here. The transfer to the library, the transfer to parks, and the transfer to public safety have always been under non-departmental because they're not specific to a general fund department. When I combine them here for this portion of the presentation, I remove that transfer out and transfer in for public safety because it would represent as a revenue and expense that's equal here. But I did not remove the parks and library transfers from that. And the reason that parks is now in non-departmental is because they fully have their own fund outside of the general fund. So they get what the transfer amount is going in and, can operate with those funds. Anything unspent can be repurposed in future years for parks projects. Does that answer your question? Doesn't look like it.
I think it's an accounting explanation.
That's
and
what
it probably
what
makes
it
sense
is.
in that way, right? But I thought one of the reasons for making this shift, and I fully support the shift, but I thought one of the reasons was so that it would be more transparent on what we're spending on parks. And this presentation clouds it, right? So I'm just trying to figure out where we get that transparency if it's not here.
Fair point. Chris, say something. I'll find it. I think there's a slot or there's a page in the budget that makes it more explicit.
I mean, Councilmember Roop says you are, I think there was, we're on the same page administratively and with the council with what we did last year to try to have the effect of being more easily understood by the public. And I think of this pie chart as being closer, right? Because when you compare Billings's general fund budget to anybody else, if we didn't do these things because of public safety and this transfer of parks, we would look all out of whack. People would go, where are you spending money on public safety? When in fact, over 3/4 is spent there. So the intent was twofold. A, so it would be more easily understood, and possibly the policy call being if the same amount of mills were going for parks in this case, and that value grew each year, there was a kind of a policy perspective that revenue could grow to the Parks Department to help deal with inflation. Unfortunately, this has worked out exactly the way the Parks Director feared it would when we sunset Park District 1, because now it's in competition every budget cycle with everybody else in the general fund. And it ends up being the perceived easier thing to do the reductions on. So Andy, how do we show it? What have you got as far as the kind of clarity? Because the last thing I'll say is, again, if I pulled up Kalispell or Helena or Missoula or Great Falls' budget, you could look at their general fund and typically see what's the percentage for parks, police, fire, recreation, et cetera.
I guess if I look at that green slice on the pie chart, you mentioned parks and library. What else is in there other than that? And should we just have a park slice and a library slice and then a other?
We should for clarity, and that probably was my mistake. And I did just look in the budget book. It's not explicitly clear in the general fund. In fact, it's not clear at all in the general fund. If you go to the Parks Operation Fund, you'll see a transfer in, and that's majority from the general fund. So to answer your question about what's in there, the property and liability insurance for the general fund is in there. The 2 elections, I think, are in there. And there's a few other ones that are pretty small, but those are the 4 biggest ones that come to mind.
So a simple adjustment for the future, right? It would be just to literally show parks rec. I would think you'd keep those together. separate library, and then have other.
I can update the slide and send it before I send it out. And then we'll post this online as well. And I'll split that into its transfer amounts. Yep.
Thank you, Andy. That, I'm sure we all agree that'd be helpful. Back on that same slide 19 that you had, there's a small additional increase for the mayor and council budget of $72,000. Can you just explain what that is?
Yep, absolutely. So mayor and council are, there's the salaries, and there's no change in salary. All the benefit costs associated with that. And just like with every other department, I do the same thing with mayor and council. I say, here's what it's going to cost. Although typically you guys are here 365 days a year. So I know what that salary cost is. The benefit cost in this case, and the reason why it's an increase is health insurance. You guys are able to elect whether to have health insurance or not. And because there's an election with potentially 6 new council members and no idea what their election for health insurance may be, we budgeted for that. And that's what the increase is.
Okay, thank you. Other questions for Andy? Councilmember Neese?
Yes, Andy, if you're going to be adjusting that little pie chart, would you mind, I mean, if it's possible to have the dollar amounts there, because the percentages are kind of nice, but I think having known how much in each of those departments are representative is helpful.
Would it be helpful if I adjusted it on this one? That's what the source of it is. It just gets to be a lot on one slide, the dollar amounts and percentages.
So you're going to say add the percentages on that slide?
I can do that, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay, anything else for Andy before we move on to public comment and then item number 2?
I think, Andy, that would help because you'd see the changes in the percentages and how that actually pie chart is shifting year over year.
Well, to clarify, do you want percent change or percent of the, because this is just percent allocation of the budget, or would you like the percentage change added on there?
I think one of the things we always have the difficulty with is, as Chris said, is suddenly now Parks is competing with the rest of the budget. And so knowing what their change, or the fire department is competing against the police, and knowing what percentage of their getting of the pie and also the dollar amounts to know, who's actually growing and who's not growing, because the percentage may be growing, but yet they're being stagnant. It just depends on what everyone else is doing. And so without having that information, we don't know if Parks is getting too much or too little. Maybe they're getting cut when they shouldn't be getting cut because, fire or police keep cutting into Parks. So.
Okay. I will rewatch this tomorrow and try to put something together that I think will answer that
and we
question.
can talk about it.
I think I have an idea, but yeah, we can work on that.
Okay, thank you. Anything else? Don't see anything. So this is an opportunity for public comment. If anybody would like to comment on the big picture, this budget overview that you've heard the discussion on, this is your opportunity before we go on to item number 2, which is the individual departments. Any public comment on the overview? If so, please come to the podium. Any public comment on the overview? No one is coming forward, so we'll close that public comment period. Move on to item number 2, the departmental presentations. Here we have 4 of them, and we will start off with the downtown bid. Katie, it's all yours. Sure. If you need a little time anyway, go ahead. And then we'll get started ASAP.
Can't even get it to work now. I didn't have one from Andy on the 14th.
Go.
To get them. There we go. Let's see. Seen it now? I'm getting nothing. I get some emails, I don't get some emails. Yeah. Is. How'd you get there?
Well, this is a small.
That's been quite a few times. The whole council, but. Yeah, it showed everybody. It showed that I should have got one.
All here?
I didn't.
Oh, we still need.
I've been looking at junk and it says I have no junk. Okay. I've had some problems with it opening up or whatever. But okay. Sure. Okay, thank you.
Hey.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you know, Gets better. It really. If everybody takes a seat, we'll get started. Okay, we are back. We left off on item number 2. This is May 19th, 2025 work session. We're going to change to allow the downtown business improvement district go first. Katie, you are our presenter, so go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I appreciate your flexibility. It doesn't, not taken lightly by me, so I appreciate it. Katie Schreiner on behalf of the Downtown Business Improvement District. Tonight I'm presenting to you our FY26 work plan and budget. The first little piece I wanted to give was just a very brief bid 101. A business improvement district is created and regulated by Montana state statute. It's created by and for property owners and managed by property owners by a board of directors appointed by city council. A business improvement district is created when property owners come together and they determine that they do in fact want to pay a special assessment on their property taxes that benefits them for services above and beyond what are offered by municipalities. In our case, the city of Billings, Yellowstone County. And those assessment rates are based on lot size and property value and building square footage. If you zoom into the business improvement district, we're going to focus on the clean zone first. This is the properties that are outlined in the green line. And just to orient you, the line at the top of the page there is 4th Avenue North, and the business improvement district clean zone extends down just south of Minnesota Avenue, encompassing our railroad that splits us right down the middle in our downtown. The clean zone is really the clean and beautification programs associated with the business improvement district. So you're going to see sidewalk sweeping, power washing, snow removal, trash bag replacement, graffiti removal, and those fine gentlemen driving around on four-wheelers, sweeping sidewalks every day. To put some numbers to the work that they do that I feel are really important to highlight, every single year they sweep over 350 miles of sidewalk. To put that into perspective, that's enough to run over 13 marathons in a year. They empty and take out over 120,000 pounds of garbage out of our downtown every single year. That would be the equivalent weight of 2 D7 dozers, just to put that into perspective. And then this year alone, they plowed over 250 miles of sidewalk snow. That would have been enough to plow the entire distance from Billings to Anaconda just this winter. So they did really work hard this winter, making downtown safe for pedestrians on the sidewalks this winter. We also implement our flower basket program. So we do purchase, install, and maintain 185 flower baskets in the downtown area. That includes 7+ miles of watering, sometimes on a daily basis, depending on the weather. We have really dialed in our petunia baskets, and we are really proud of that program. It really does add a pop of color, something really beautiful and inviting to our downtown streets. Those flower baskets are going up this year, the week after Memorial Day, so you'll see the little baby petunias hanging up there, and then pretty quickly, as soon as the weather starts to warm up and the sun starts shining, those baskets start to grow and overflow, and it is a program that we're really proud of. It does take over 150 gallons of water in the summertime to keep them looking the way that they do, and then our guys really go to battle with the aphids, with the hail, with the wind, other factors, but they still look quite beautiful. If you zoom back out into the district, we're going to look at the safe zone now. To reorient you again, the north side of this boundary extends all the way through the hospital corridor, all the way up to Poly Drive, and extends south down to South Park. And you can kind of see on the right-hand side there, that's the Phillips 66 refinery boundary on the right-hand side. And again, The railroad dissects this district right in half, and properties including BNSF Railroad are included in this district. The district as a whole encompasses over 1,000 property parcels that are part of this district here. As you heard me a few weeks ago, we are in the middle of a renewal process that we have to do every 10 years in order to continue the work that we do in a business improvement district. On April 30th, we did finally receive a signed petition from Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad, which did put us over our 60%. We're currently sitting right at about 75% approval rating, which is enough for us to come back and request that the City Council certify another 10 years of the Business Improvement District. So we're really excited about that effort that we took. But it does mean that we have a long road ahead of us as we look to the next 10 years, and our safety program and how we address public safety and the perception of public safety in our downtown is our #1 priority. So I wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about what our public safety program looks like in the near future and going forward. In the past, our cooperative safety program has included a partnership with Billings Police Department. It has included a homeless outreach team made up of peer support specialists. And we really have focused on crime prevention through environmental design in partnership with the city, in partnership with our tax increment financing district, and really leaning into that environmental component of safety for our downtown. As we continue to look at the budget and look at staffing, we have had to take a look at what the future of public safety for downtown might look like. And so we workshop today at our Business Improvement Board of Directors meeting, what does the future cooperative safety program look like? And what that's gonna entail is a combination of several different factors. It is going to continue to include a partnership with the Billings Police Department and those officers that we have had in the past as downtown resource officers. But we also are going to start working more closely with our community service officers, or CSOs. They do drive marked vehicles. They are connected with dispatch and the police department. So we're going to continue or begin to work a little bit more closely with them to have a higher presence for CSOs downtown. We're also looking to engage a contract with private security firm in downtown Billings. This will be something that we're working on in the next couple of weeks to identify the best possible option to secure private security for additional patrols. We're also going to rebrand our homeless outreach team as a safety outreach team, continuing to really lean into our peer support specialists. These are individuals, as you all probably know and have heard, who are actively and successfully living in recovery and have gone through extensive peer-to-peer counseling training in order to work with individuals who are living on the street, experiencing homelessness, in the middle of a mental health crisis, or challenged with substance use disorders. They're working in relationship building process to get those folks off of the street into appropriate services, whether that is housing, whether that is treatment, whether that is medical care, or being able to also reconnect them with their families or other appropriate services. We also are going to continue to work in crime prevention through environmental design, setting out the goal that ultimately we'd like to have every property that's within the Business Improvement District evaluated using the crime prevention through environmental design program in order to really have an environment that feels, looks, and is safe for our visitors, the people who live and work downtown. So as we look to the future of the cooperative safety program, we are challenged with the numbers that are currently current in the Billings Police Department. Their patrol numbers are down. As they look to hire in the next year, we anticipate that the 2 officers who have since transferred out or been promoted out of our resource positions, those positions will not be filled. I'm anticipating for a minimum of the remainder of this calendar year, but potentially into the next calendar year, into 2026. So currently we have 1 full-time Billings police officer, Nick Fonte, but the downtown Billings bid is still committed to the cooperative safety program and that public-private partnership that we have established with great success in a partnership between the property owners within downtown, the City of Billings, and the police department. So as officers do become available for future resource positions, we are still committed. We do believe that that is still the best option for our cooperative safety program. But in the meantime, while we have these gaps by not being able to fully staff this program, we are going to go with this program that we talked about, this future cooperative safety program, some combination of private security, community service officers, our safety outreach team, and future and further SEPTED evaluations.
So you're not going to hire an
It's not an option for us to hire another officer right now. My understanding is that the officers are not available to come onto our team.
So Katie, are you going to hire an additional community safety officers?
We are not going to be hiring additional CSOs. That's not the path that we're moving forward. What we've been working on with the sergeant and lieutenant that we're working with currently is that the CSOs would just have a higher presence downtown. They would still be dispatched as needed across the community, but perhaps because downtown is sort of centrally located in our community, they could office out of our office, potentially if they're doing paperwork, if they are filling out reports, they could do that in our office, or they could spend more time when they're not on a call, perhaps patrolling in their vehicle or on foot around downtown as they're available for that. We also would identify that if we had a business who potentially might have, for example, a shoplifting incident, if the person who perpetrated that incident is no longer on site, a CSO could go in, take that report that otherwise a police officer, a patrol officer would do, and then be able to escalate that report as needed up into a different person in another route, but taking on perhaps some of the administrative parts of taking a report for theft, vehicle accidents, other pieces, vandalism, et cetera, and take that off of the plate of what would normally be our resource officers, but not hiring anybody additional.
So you'll be missing that. The actual enforcement piece of the officer not being there because the CSOs can't do any of that. They would have to let the perpetrator walk away. And your bid understands that the business owners, the customers who are downtown, they may just see it happen and they're just going to let it walk instead of where an officer could actually intervene and enforce.
Councilmember Neese, I would say that largely that's correct. This isn't our first option. Our first option is that we have 3 officers, potentially 4 officers. That's always been a conversation on the table with our bid board. So our first option would 100% be that we would have 3 full-time Billings police officers. The law enforcement side of this is a critical and important piece of this. However, my understanding is that's simply not an option for us right now due to the numbers of patrol officers. If those numbers are filled, we would be first in line to re-secure 2 new officers in those positions. In the meantime, as we have that gap, we still understand and recognize the need for public safety as a presence of additional bodies downtown who are patrolling, who are keeping eyes on things, who are taking reports, who are helping my team escalate the incidents that might happen to the appropriate person as quickly as possible, trying to prioritize that within the downtown. That's sort of our option at this point for the time being.
Have you considered either contracting with the county or even the city of Laurel, their police department, to fulfill that officer role within the bid there?
Councilmember Neese, I have reached out to the county sheriff's department. I haven't heard back on that request yet. I hadn't considered Laurel, so that's a great option too. I'm certainly willing to be creative and nimble in any and all opportunities to make sure that our downtown is as safe as possible in this scenario.
Okay.
Councilmember Boyette and Rips has had questions.
Thank you, Mayor. I had a business owner contact me and said, where are the bumblebees? So I found out that 2 of them are missing, and I told her that they weren't there. But maybe you haven't contacted the people downtown to know that they're not there? Obviously, this business owner didn't know that. Is there a way you can communicate to the property owners and say, we only have 1 instead of 3?
Councilmember Boyette, I appreciate that sentiment, and this is all fairly new information for us as the last promotional period happened within the police department. That happened very rapidly. So that was that we lost one of our officers just due to a promotion, which good for him, sad for us. And that did happen very quickly. And so we have been really trying to establish what our next steps are. Once we determine what the combination of services that we can provide utilizing these bid funds for public safety program, our plan is to market that heavily out to not only our downtown business community, these property owners who do pay into the business improvement district, but also our community as a whole, to make sure that they understand that while this might look different, we do anticipate that the same services to some extent will be offered. Our resource officers have increasingly been unable to enact some of that enforcement part of their positions anyway. And so we do believe that we can fill that gap. And so once we have a really clear plan of these next steps, the next plan is to market that heavily to our downtown community. We want them to understand that there are still a lot of options for them to reach out to us, reach out to these services, and to still reach out to Officer Fonte while he's still with us.
Thank you, Mayor. Katie, I just wanted to give you a chance here. I think it got lost a little bit of why you're not able to get new officers in. And it's my understanding that when new officers come on, they're not eligible for the bid, right? You have to, this is a special assignment. And so you're getting experienced officers down into the bid. So I just wanted to give you a chance to kind of let everybody know, why this isn't just a simple fix of just hire more officers for the bid.
I appreciate that, Councilmember Rupsis. That is true. We have specific requirements for officers who would apply for these positions and be eligible for that. At a minimum, they have 3 years of experience as a patrol officer on their own, so they would have gone through the extensive training that exists within our police department to become an officer on patrol. In addition, this to us also feels that we have to support our Billings Police Department and the officers that are there. We want the patrol to be as fully staffed as possible before other officers are pulled off of that patrol and into these special duties. If a patrol isn't full, is that putting our officers in our community at higher risk? And so for us to say that we are committed to this partnership with the police department, still that is a painful transition for us to say for some time we may not have these officers. If the police department were able to hire, snap your fingers and have 10 brand new officers ready to go, they're still 6+ months out before they fill those patrol positions, then ultimately freeing up other patrol officers to come in. So even if we were able to hire them right now as a community, it would still be 6+ months before we could interview, select, and onboard 2 new officers into our position. As soon as that's available to us, sign me up. We're here for that. But it does take some time. The logistics are complicated.
Okay, very good. Go ahead, finish.
Our community resource director, Cody, you guys have seen him in front of you several different times. He's working, with us to develop the bid safety team. He's continuing to work and evolve the Motivated Addiction Alternative Program, working very closely in partnership with Yellowstone County Commissioners, Yellowstone County Detention Facility. This is a program that works to, in partnership with the city and county courts in order to give a person who might be in jail an option to seek treatment instead of staying in jail, freeing up space in jail for other folks who really need to be there. This is still continues to be an important program. We need to find options as the jail is not available, as other enforcement opportunities are not available. We really still need to find options in order to meet individuals who are on the street where they're at, to serve them in the appropriate way, get them into services, get them into housing, other treatment options, whatever that might be. So Cody's working really tirelessly at continuing to develop this program, and it works hand in hand with our law enforcement partners in this. You might not think of public art as a public safety or a clean program component, but it is one of our most important. It is one of our most impactful, and it is something that we can do that makes a very large and significant difference to our downtown. Recently, we've just completed our light bike trail and mural program. As we talk with property owners who may or may not be challenged with vandalism, with graffiti, we've talked about graffiti in this room several times in the recent past. If a property owner is struggling with vandalism and graffiti, the number one option that I would give them that has the most significant impact is to put a mural on their wall. These murals have now been in place for over a year, and we have not had a single tagging incident on these murals. It is is just a remarkable, very easy, very impactful step in order to beautify our downtown and also create a safer place for us. So we're continuing to work on our mural program, adding lights on the sidewalks and in alleys, sculpture programs, more murals, more art. It really is a beautiful and wonderful solution to public safety. In addition, we also are bringing more people downtown through the Business Improvement District. We have an extremely successful communication program. We just hit over 10,000 followers on Instagram. I'm not much of a social media person myself, but this is a very significant milestone for our community. There are very few organizations in our community that have over 10,000 follower reach. The only one above us is the zoo. And so unless you guys want to approve maybe a sloth on our bid team, that's how they really grew their social media following and reach. But I'm really proud of my team for continuing to communicate with our community members to really ensure that they understand what's happening downtown, how it can benefit to them, and how they can be engaged. We program over 42 event days a year. Lots of really great things happening on the events. So the numbers that we're looking at here, the majority of our revenues come in via the bid assessment. You're looking at over 60% comes in from the assessment that we talked about. The other significant portion of revenues come in via event revenue. 25% of our budget is brought in by these events that we do. Additionally, we do try to work very hard to secure other revenue sources through grant funding for public art programs, other arts and culture programs that we might have. Grants are an important part of that. As you look at the large district there, like I said, we have over 1,000 properties in the district. These are assessed via lot square footage, taxable value, building square footage, and we have assessments in 2 different zones, our clean zone and our safe zone. The safe zone is broken up into 3 areas. Really, that is based on the level of services that they might secure or use. So the few residential properties that we have in our business improvement district, they fall within the safe zone 2 or 3, where they're paying a much, much lower assessment on that. The clean zone, that is that core property area. They're receiving a much higher level of services via the sidewalk sweeping, snow plowing, graffiti removal, et cetera. If you look at the way this revenue is broken down, the safe zone makes up 75% of our district, the clean zone about 25%, really impacting a significant number of properties and really kind of balancing the revenues that are coming in both the clean and the safe zone there. Expenses, our 2 highest expenses that we have in our programming really falls in payroll and our cooperative safety program. Up until this point, the cooperative safety program has been allocated directly to the salaries of Billings police officers. But now, like I said, we're really working to create a new safety program that is going to still meet the needs of our downtown community using that budget within that same budget expense. And I'll leave it at that and hopefully answer any questions that you might have. We feel very strongly that the work that we're doing within the Business Improvement District has a significant impact on our community, not only the property owners that do pay into the district by their choice, but also to our community as a whole. This is what creates a downtown experience that is safe, that is welcoming, that is beautiful, and is something that is sustainable for years in the future. I appreciate y'all's support as the city to continue via your petition to continue the work in the bid. The next time you'll see me outside of the budget cycle is to bring back the bid to certify another 10 years for this work that we're doing. But I'm proud of my team. I'm proud of the work that we're doing. I hope that you see the difference that we are making, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Very good. Any questions for Katie? Councilor Afterlader.
Just one quick one, Katie. In the expense detail, there's about $40,000 for a bid work plan. Is that an annual expense, or is this a this year expense creating a work plan for 3 years, 5 years? What exactly, can you explain that to me?
Councilmember Außenleiter, the bid work plan is really made up of all of the aspects of the bid clean work that we do, that bid team that we have that does snow plowing, that does flower baskets, that does graffiti removal, that does power washing. So all of the equipment, all of the supplies, this is outside of the staffing to do that. This is what it takes for us to implement all of the programs that I just displayed to you outside of the safety program. So elephant snot to do graffiti, equipment to keep our vehicles up and running, that kind of thing.
Katie, in Europe, they have these miniature street sweepers, which are not street sweepers, they're just sidewalk sweepers, and they look like what you see driving down a road, except for they're maybe a third the size, same brush system, water, vacuum. They're not cheap, but have we ever considered buying one of those to run around the downtown area and the alleys and things?
Mayor Cole, we actually have a machine. It's called a green machine, is what it's called. It is a good machine. We are very challenged to use it due to the state of our sidewalks in downtown. It does not, and it's an older machine, so perhaps a newer machine maybe would navigate those a little bit more with some more precision. It does not navigate the changes and breaks in elevation on our sidewalks. And so it's really challenging to use. You might come across a break and then it'll flip my bid team right over the top of it. So we may need to just look at, grinding out some angles on the sidewalks before we can put the green machine back into.
Okay, very good, thanks. Anything else? Councilor Bernice, and we'll,
Yep. Yeah,
then we'll move on.
Katie, I know that we have a lot of assessments that we charge business owners downtown for encroaching on our sidewalks and things like that. So are you seeing that money that we collect being used downtown for some of those sidewalks to make sure that you can utilize that, or is there a problem there with the sidewalks that we're not seeing fixed like they should be?
Councilmember Neese, my understanding is that there are programs in place in order to repair some of these sidewalks. It has been kind of long on our to-do list to engage with the city, with property owners. I think that's the challenge, is that the property owners are responsible for the sidewalks in front of their spaces. We would need to bring together a coalition of sorts to really look at what it would take to take care of sidewalks on a larger scale. I do know that, over the last year, you've actually seen a significant number of those sidewalks be repaired. We have considered buying a piece of equipment that we could just grind the angles of those sidewalks out as a temporary measure without having to replace the entire sidewalk. Over the years, a lot of the sidewalks have been replaced, also having to navigate the vaulted sidewalks that we have in downtown. So replacing a sidewalk in downtown is often not quite as easy as a flat form concrete replacement. You're looking at some massive structural elements of those vaulted sidewalks. So it's a fairly complicated conversation, one that I have had with Public Works of us saying, hey, this will be something that we put on our list and let's put that together.
Okay. And Katie, I noticed on the map there's a couple of properties that have different colors, and I'm wondering specifically around 21st Street, is that underpass within your zone at all? And do you guys maintain and keep the graffiti off of there?
We do not maintain the underpass at 21st. That would be an excellent location for some mural work, which I know the East Billings Urban Renewal District or their membership organization is actually looking at adding a mural to that underpass. That would be an excellent location for that. The different colored or different circled properties on there may be exempt properties, federally owned properties, otherwise centrally assessed properties are not are marked differently on here too. But the 21st Street underpass specifically is not maintained by the bid.
Okay, and what is the difference between the safe zone 2 and 3 and the 1?
It's basically indicating the level of services provided. Again, like I said, we have a few residential units or properties within the business improvement district. Those properties are assessed at a much lower value. Additionally, there's a significant number of properties along the railroad and some of our more industrial properties on the east side of downtown are undeveloped properties, so they just simply don't receive services at all. It's very unlikely that our police officers would respond there. It's very unlikely that any of the other services would be taken advantage of there. So we go property by property, all 1,000 of them, and determine that level of service that's provided.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Katie. Downtown is looking good. Keep up the good work. We
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Next item up then is our Human Resources Department, Carla Stanton.
No, you're good. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'd like to present to you the Human Resources, Health Insurance, Property, and Liability budgets for FY26. Just some fun little facts. We employ 1,090. Wow, that was loud. We employ 1,090 employees, and we go up to another additional 330 in the summer months. Our average age is 43. You can see I'm well above average here in that category. And the average length of service is 9.1 years, which is actually down a little bit from 2 years ago, and our average age is down 2 years as well from 2 years ago. The next slide is just a way to look at age and service, and you can see I have it divided out by groups. One group I'd like to point out really is our police department. Right now, we have only 5 police officers that have 20 or more years of service. That is really pretty low. And 48% of our officers right now are 5 years and under. We are the youngest that we've ever been that I can remember. So, but again, I mean, they get done what we need them to do. But I just wanted to point that out because that was really interesting to me. I was really surprised at that when we pulled those numbers up. Next thing I'd like to talk about is actually, just very quickly, HR, we wear many hats. We do all the risk and safety, or a majority of it for the city, all the benefits, workers' comp, liability, property, FMLA, payroll, wow, and administrative services as far as posting of jobs and applicant tracking and all of that. And I had one retirement in fiscal year 25, and this year, in fiscal year 26, I will have 2 more. Jolene Yerger will leave us about a year from now, and then Val Ronquillo has 30 years, and she will leave us sometime this summer, we believe. Sorry, every time I look over to you, then I lose you guys. I'll put this more this way. Anyway, so we do have some shoes to fill, but I am very proud of what they do every day. We have a lot of work, and we do the best to get as much of that done as we can. We have a new payroll person, actually 2 weeks. 2 weeks, she joined us, Jacqueline Bowers, and then Kim Disk, another good hire that joined us in December. So they do a tremendous amount of work, and I appreciate them every day, and I wanted to give them a little shout out. Our human resources budget, I'm struggling with this mic tonight, is $1.12 million, and 69% of that, as you can see, is personal services, and another 31% is O&M. And of that O&M, 78% of that, or actually 74% of that, is in contract, our software, applicant tracking, and our onboarding software of employees, as well as the contract services, just our IT services. But that makes up 74% of our O&M. And you can see on the next slide, that is broken down. But one thing I do want to say is that this year, we tried to keep things even as we could with the financial situation that we have, and we, with cost of living adjustments and as well as health insurance increases, we were able to keep our budget at $1,200 increase over a year ago. So we did our best to keep those costs flat. The next thing I'd like to visit with you about is actually the health and dental insurance. Am I doing something wrong here? It just seems to be cutting me in and out. Okay. Don't move, he said, and I have a hard time sitting still. People that know me, I don't sit still. Anyway, health and RX claims are projected to be $14.9 million for FY26. That is about a 10% increase over a year ago. Our health insurance consultant projected increases at about 14.7% increase this past year. The Health Insurance Committee met in September of last year to set rates for for calendar year 25, and they made a decision to spend back $1 million in reserves to get those premiums costs down for the city as well as the employees. If you're familiar with our health insurance plan, there is language in all 3 union contracts. And what that language states is that we will, as a city, split 50%. Let's say that we are projecting a $500,000 increase. Can you hear me now? Oh, you can, okay. I'm either so loud or I'm not very loud. I can't figure it out. Anyway, if you can hear me, that's great. Anyway, so if you have a $500,000 projected increase, $250,000 of that is borne by the city, and the other $250,000 is split up by all the employees. And that is language that we've had in the contract since 2011. And the history of that for some of the newcomers here is in 2011, our health insurance was broke. We were down to about $200,000 with a recommended reserve level in 2011 of about $1.9 million. So at that point, the committee made a non-popular decision to go to an RFP. And at that point, St. V's and Billings Clinic responded to the RFP, and the committee made up of 15 members, 3 from the Police, Fire, and Teamsters Union, 5 non-bargaining people, and 1 retiree. And at that point, they made a very tough decision because our employees, 52% were with SCL Health or St. V's, and the other 48% were with Billings Clinic. So, but that committee has always done the right thing in my eyes. I'm very proud of what that committee does every single year. And they made a decision. It was a tough decision because our committee was very split too. We had about half of the members with St. Vincent and the other half with Billings Clinic. And they did, they chose St. Vincent Healthcare because we had the best rates going forward. And I think the rest is history. And the reason I want to point that out is because since 2012, our increases to 2025 have been 14.6%, 1.12% a year annually since 2012, since we made that switch. I will tell you, we had a lot of employees kicking and screaming. I mean, 48% of them were not happy. They either had to switch providers or they had to go over and find another physician. But I'll tell you, the success that committee has had and that our rates have stayed that flat, everybody understood why that decision was made, and it really it's been a good thing for the city. It has saved us thousands and thousands of dollars as a city and as an employee. So I'm really proud of that committee. We are very seasoned. However, in the last actually this last year, we've had 4 retire off of that committee. So now we have some new people that are, been selected for that role, and we'll just have to get them all up to speed and get them rolling. But I am really proud of the work that committee has done. I can't say enough about that because our plans across the country, I don't think have that history. I'm confident of that. Anyway, all right. In fact, I want to show you a slide that demonstrates that. Andy, if you go to the next slide. Sorry, I guess. My assistant, Andy, here. You can see that in 2000, and my old eyes here, in 2010, the contribution was $623, and then it goes to $688 in 2011, and that was when we were broke, flat out broke. We had to make a decision to do an RFP, something we always threatened to do, but never thought we would. And we had no choice that year. And then you can see how it really flattened out in 13, 14, and 15. It stayed flat at $800 was the city's contribution per month. And then in 16, you can actually see we had a decrease. We were building our reserves, so at that point, we spent back some money. City gets 50% of it, the employee got 50% of it, and lowered that rate, monthly contribution to $755. Then you can see it went to $830, then it stayed stagnant. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years at $846. Unheard of. The next year, in 2024, or 23, sorry, it went up 23 went up $10 to $856, then $866, and then however this last year, we are experiencing the increase of an additional $36 over the year before per employee per month. And just so you know that we had 5 years that we were locked into our SCL Health contract, and since 2012 up to 2020, we did not have an increase on that. They honored those rates that long. That's incredible. Then in 2025 this year, Intermountain Health came back to us and said, hey, there are some things we need to increase. We had our insurance consultant look at those increases, and he's like, you still have a screaming deal. And we felt that they've been fair for us for as long as we did, but we did project higher claims costs this year because of that. But again, very fair rates. A lot of things haven't changed since 2012 in the rates. So I'm very appreciative of the relationship that we have with them, and hopefully continue success going forward. Any questions on health insurance? You can tell I'm very passionate about it. Anyway, liability and property. This is where we take a beating a lot, especially in the property market, as Andy had said. We were projecting it at 20% increases. I did talk to the broker last week, and he believes, he's hopeful we'll come in at about 15%, which would be good news because that property market has been tough, partly because we've had some experience. We've had 2 claims in 22 for about $5 million. That didn't help us, but as Andy said earlier, if you have your residential property tax in general has gone up, and it's really follows suit in the commercial area as well. Liability insurance, we have good news with that. We did remain flat, actually, I think about a 2% decrease. So that was good news, but that premium is still about $2.1 million. So, and that's for a $50,000 deductible on the liability. And actually, the property insurance right now, we're at $250,000 for other perils, all other perils, but we had to buy down our health insurance, not our health insurance, hail and wind, so that we could get at least reasonable deductibles on that. So we paid an additional premium to buy that deductible down. And accomplishments or good news. As Chris spoke about earlier tonight, workers' comp, we're excited to say that we know we're going to save $400,000 in premiums out the gate July 1, but we also have the ability to earn on a conservative level another $400,000 in a dividend. So we're very excited about that. We anticipate that to be around $800,000 year 1. And liability premium, the good news again, as I said, it remained flat, or actually almost about a 2% decrease. Really, really good news. We have been working on this for years, my staff. We have finally updated the HR policies. I'm so excited. Woohoo! That's a woohoo, sorry. and then the other thing is we implemented the onboarding software and the applicant tracking for our hiring, and that has really helped simplify the process, and it's been really good for hiring supervisors. We get through things much quicker than we used to. And I guess one more thing. Our challenges right now still are ongoing training. We struggle to get training done with the number of people we have in HR. That's really one thing that will be one of our big challenges for next year and future years. Recruitment and retention, the good news is our turnover was 17.6% a year ago. It has dropped down to 11.9. I really credit that to going to market pay as much as we could with Teamsters and non-bargaining last year. It has helped because, and where that helps so much is my staff. We were just a revolving door. All we were doing is exiting and onboarding people. It took so much of Lita, Val, payroll's time, and I can start to see we're starting to get a few more things done by just that decreasing that few percentage. But pre-COVID, we were less than 7%. And I know that's pretty much the norm with everybody. Their turnover has gone higher, but I do think the market pay has really helped slow that door a little bit. And then the other thing, of course, is if you've ever been to the 4th floor of the unfinished part of the 4th floor, we have lots of boxes. And in those boxes are lots of personnel records that we need to digitize. I'm not sure how we're ever going to get to that. We almost have the medical done, though. Wynette in Chris's office has done a tremendous job. I give a shout out to her, helping us get the medical records all electronic for our employees, but still working on, well, it's just a big elephant to chew. So anyway, questions?
So before you go there, if I could, so I think Carla runs such a lean operation, and it's been so lean for so long that people just lose sight of it. You got 7 people with 1,100 full-time employees plus 300 plus in the summer, self-funded health plan, and doing payroll. So one of the real unfortunate realities is, as Carla said, is training. So though we've gotten turnover down, that's a good thing. We really, and this isn't, we promote and we hire some great people, but too often we kind of hand them the keys. There's the door. Let us know when you need help. And that would be an area for sure if in the coming years, and it's been put off now for well over the 6-7 years I've been here. It's been being put off for years and years. At some point, that investment would be a very wise investment because we put people into those management roles, middle management, their first opportunity, And that's just an area that I think would more than pay for itself, but there's a cost on the front end. So it is not included in this budget, this year's budget request with everything that's going on and the additional 2-3. But I think every year that we kick the can on that, we're missing an opportunity to help our people be successful on our behalf. So,
Chris, what kind of training are we talking about then? Is it specific to their roles, or is it more general?
Really, Councilmember Rapsis, Mayor, City Council, really what we're looking at. I mean, we need to do harassment training, anything like that, bloodborne pathogen, any type of safety training, ethics training. That's the stuff that we would like to do more broadly. Of course, we leave it up to more to the departments to do, train them as to what they need to do in their job duties every day. But really what we need is overall city training, those topics that I mentioned, and just move forward with that is we need that. And supervisor training too. We have a lot of new supervisors that need training on FMLA, workers' comp, how we handle incidents, accidents, all those kind of things. I do have good news though. Danielle Pavick, our assistant city attorney, in her previous role, she was an employment law person. She has offered to do some discipline training to our supervisors. So we are now getting that scheduled, but she is helping us out of legal. I don't know I think Gina's aware, but anyway, so we're thrilled at that. And then because our handbook has been redone, there's a few changes that we need to get through to all of our supervisors. So we will also, then we'll tag team on the end of that training and talk about the latest and greatest changes that have been made in the handbook.
Councilor Aspenleiter and Councilmember Boyette.
Okay.
Thanks. And Carla, you certainly didn't understate it, but you can't overstate, I think, the impact of our costs for healthcare. And I mean, that percentage of increase over the last 15 years is unheard of. I mean, it's remarkable. I mean, in our business in 13 years, I think we've only ever seen a no rate increase twice. And every year following, it's been, 15, 16% to make up for that. And I hope that the public understands that part of the financial burden that gets put into every department associated with personnel costs. I mean, that is a true benefit that Intermountain SCL Legacy and Intermountain now is certainly providing to our community, and that relationship is so critical to what we're doing here in the budget. I don't think you can ever understate the impact of that and the impact of the work there. And I'm encouraged that as we see the transition now from SCL Legacy into Intermountain, that we're seeing that same level of coordination and cooperation. And I'd encourage everybody from council to also go participate in these mics are awful. Go participate in that luncheon with the Intermountain team. I think that's coming up Wednesday. And I'd encourage you to express the importance of that to the Intermountain team as well, so that they truly understand the impact that they're having on the taxpayers of our community by what they're doing. I think it's important to continue to emphasize to the hospitals who are not taxpayers. They don't pay property taxes, which is a bone of contention with the legislature every year. But it's important to emphasize to them, to make them aware of the impact that they have with that contract on our taxpayers of this city.
Councilor Boyette.
Thank you, Mayor. Carla, in your 5-year outlook, you only show addition of one person.
I'm never greedy.
No, but being realistic.
I'm always grateful.
Being realistic between us girls right now, how many people would you really, not in a perfect world, but what do you think you really need?
I looked up some benchmarks, and for companies of, I even went with the 500 to 1,000 because we're closer to that than 1,001 over, even though we're a little higher than 1,090, and it's 0.82 for every 100. So that puts us at about 9, and that does not, and we should not have anyone that does payroll typically. So when I look at Missoula, they have 9 people in their HR right now, and they have 672 employees, and they don't do payroll. And she thinks she can't keep up. I said, we drowned long ago. But anyway, in all honesty, I mean, I would be grateful to have one. But realistically, we should have 9 if you don't count payroll. Because the bigger you get economies of scale, obviously. So I went with that number that was a little bit lower. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Councilmember Neese?
Thank you, Mayor. And Carla, I agree with you. I think training is important. You and I have talked about this before. Anyone in the corporate world knows that we do training and we're required to do training. You know, every single month we're doing some type of training, and most of the time it's automated. There really isn't, you know, any personnel interaction, and so I don't know what the cost of some of the software is to get the city to do that. But those are the kind of things that we wanted to make sure our employees and, like you say, supervisors are well trained to avoid any kind of lawsuits down the road and that. So I would hope that, you know, again, I knew we're in a budget constraint. I understand that. And so, but that would be something that I'd love to see how much that would cost to have that type of training implemented. So we can, as council, try to fit that into the budget somewhere. And again, like Andy said, if we put that in, we got to take something out. We just, doesn't necessarily mean it's from your department, but it has to be from some department to make it even. And then the other question I had is, we're going to see a presentation here that I looked through briefly on the Public Works, and I noticed Public Work has a lot of the same things that you mentioned in your presentation as far as what you do with the recruiting, the training, the payroll, and things like that. So how much of what you do interacts with Public Works, and should some of that maybe come over to you to where you actually handle more of all the employees, or is Public Works kind of separate in what they do and that you just don't handle their employees?
They do a lot of their safety training because they have a safety coordinator in Public Works. So they do a lot of their real job-specific training for safety. Payroll, they would have people within their administrative people that would, you know, make sure the hours are entered correctly, that kind of thing. And it all then loads into HR.
Into you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Is there any kind of ability for you as an HR to work with their people to say bring training over to the rest of the city, and then of course then departments would pay Public Works for their time just like you would intertransfer?
Yeah, I think there is definitely some economies of scale there. I think Parks could really take advantage of some of what Heidi provides, and other divisions as well. So we've talked about that. We just really need to get it going, because I think she is a wealth of information. I think she'd be helpful to other divisions that do like things, equipment operators, that type of thing. So I think we need to look at doing that, and we started at one point and we never really got very far with it. So
okay, well, I look
Okay.
forward to maybe something like that happening,
Okay.
where we use these departments kind of come together more, and not be so siloed as we sometimes are.
I agree. Thank you.
Okay, we'll move on to our legal department if there aren't nothing else for Carla. Thank you, Carla. Great. Appreciate your help. And on to Gina.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I actually have probably way more slides than I'm supposed to. I was told I was supposed to be pretty brief. So I'm going to zip through a lot of these, and I'm happy to answer questions at the end if I need to go back to anything. Just a quick reminder about your legal department and what it does. Just a slide to give you an idea of some of the kinds of things that we do. The civil division obviously is giving you all, as well as all the departments, support and advice and some legal opinions. And our criminal division obviously focuses on the prosecution of the misdemeanor offenses within the city of Billings and everything that goes along with that. Providing victim services and the appeals and revocations and things of that nature. Our current staffing level is we're authorized for 27 positions. Of the 3 civil division attorneys, one of those currently handles public safety matters. That's the code enforcement nuisance property litigation. We don't have any staffing changes or any new programming or anything like that for the upcoming fiscal year, except for, this is contained in the budget overview, just on paper, we need to convert one of the criminal deputies from the civil division to this, from the criminal division to the civil division to reflect the staffing adjustments that were made as a result of the passage of the public safety mill levy in 2021. During that time, the city attorney's office pledged to dedicate resources to code enforcement to assist with litigation of code violations and nuisance properties. Those are cases that are civil in nature, and they're handled by a civil deputy in our office. They're not a criminal prosecutor because they're not criminal cases. So just to clarify, this is not an additional position, and it's not prioritizing non-public safety matters over public safety cases. It's just an adjustment to correctly classify the position that's handling the code enforcement and the nuisance property cases. So this is the slide that's just showing you the overall numbers for the last few years. Our new cases opened. This does not include municipal infractions or code cases. For 2024 is a little over 4,200. The warrant requests for 2024 are a little over 1,300, and the warrant requests are, those are, just as a reminder, those are cases that are sent by law enforcement for us to review. That those are cases that have not been cited or not charged by law enforcement. They're sent to us for review to make that determination. And then the 1,819, that's the cases that we are receiving for requests to review for people who are violating their bail, their bond, conditions of release, and any violations of their sentence. So those are the cases we're reviewing to file those kinds of petitions. This slide is showing you the total number of criminal and traffic cases over the last several years. You see the big spike in 2019, and we've been gradually coming back down. This year to date, we're a little over 1,600 cases as of May 15th. And this slide shows you the average caseloader per prosecutor in our office. The last couple of years, it has been pretty stable, I guess, pretty constant. For 2024, our average caseload for the non-DV prosecutors is a little over 800. We'd really like to see that number come down to probably around 500 to 600. The DV prosecutors, I think, are in a pretty good range right now. That's much more reasonable, much more manageable for them. But as soon as we can get some additional hiring done, I think we'll be in a much better position for the non-DV prosecutors. This slide is showing you the breakdown of the non-domestic violence cases that are referred and those that are filed. So the first three columns are showing you the cases. The last three columns are showing you the counts. This is a little confusing, but just essentially, if you look at that top row, for all the theft categories, we're receiving 629 cases and have filed 504 of those cases. Going further to, which is an 80% cases filed. If you go further to the right, it shows counts referred. So that just means that while we receive one case that might have it might be a theft case, but it might have multiple counts. So that's just showing you all of the counts that have been referred. So 80% for the cases, and we're about 81% for counts filed. And then all the different categories down, going all through to the bottom, we're about 87, 89% filing rate for the total for non-DV cases, which is pretty stable. Last year, 2023, we were about 89% as well. Moving on to the domestic violence cases, this is showing over the last several years, the total DV cases, this is everything combined. This year was 970, or 2024 was 973, and we filed 578 of those cases, so right about 60% filing rate. And this is the breakdown for those domestic violence cases, showing you the cases referred for the individual categories: partner, family member assault, violation of no contact orders, violation of order of protection, sexual assault cases, and privacy and communication, and stalking. So again, the first couple of columns are showing you the cases filed, and then further to the right, the counts referred. So when there are multiple counts, so that's why that number goes up just a bit. So this slide this is a newer slide because in 2024, our office worked with the police department to implement a new procedure to cut down on delay in charging to file certain cases. So the officers can file certain cases directly into municipal court and instead of sending them to our office for review. That happens essentially when an officer is on the scene and the suspect has left the scene. And when in circumstances when an officer can make a clear determination that they would have charged that person if they were there. Previously, those came to our office to review for warrant requests, but now we've implemented a procedure that they directly file those cases into municipal court with a warrant request for the court. So that really has cut down on the delay in charging in those cases. And last year, there was 120 cases that were handled this way. Right now, we're just doing it for the more serious offenses, generally the domestic violence cases, but I'm hopeful that we can implement something like this more broadly with other cases. But it is a little bit more work for the officers, so it's been a little hurdle for us. But it provides for a much faster turnaround on these cases, gets warrants out for these people a lot quicker than if they're sitting on our desks trying to get through our backlog.
Are those numbers included in the slides before that?
They're cases that are eventually assigned to us, yes. Yeah. Okay, this slide is moving out of criminal into the civil department, and these are our public records requests, which our public records requests have really been escalating quite a bit over the last few years, but I really think that these are hard to predict. They're kind of all over the place. This year we're at about 184, which is down a bit from last year at the same time. I think that we figured about 60 down about 60 in the same time period, which really means absolutely nothing because these are public records requests, just kind of they're really unpredictable. It depends on what else is going on in the community. It depends on what kind of litigation might be ongoing. It's current events. It just depends on all kinds of things. So as a general trend, they've been increasing pretty significantly, and I don't, while they may go up and down, I don't really expect that to go away. I expect that trend to continue. And here is finally our budget slide. I told you a lot about what we do, but the city attorney's office obviously is, our budget primarily consists of personal services and O&M. Obviously, we don't generate any revenue, and given the kind of services that we provide. So as you can see, there's about 10.9% of our budget that covers operations and maintenance, but the bulk, 77% of our budget is personal services. And I do have the amounts and the percentages in the one, because I don't have a million different slices of the pie. But the increase shown there, the increase of 149 thousand is due to the increased operating costs, increases in monthly charges for phone, parking, computer equipment, our subscriptions, our software licenses. There's been increases in our bar association dues, things like that. So that's generally where our increases are coming from. Oh, and obviously you can see up there the anticipated grant revenue of about 270,000 and fines and forfeitures about 46,000. So we currently have 4 vacancies. Those were positions we anticipated getting filled as soon as we moved into the new facility here. I didn't get positions filled right away, and that's actually a good thing now that I look back. We had some a couple retirements, and so we were filling some other positions to replace people who were leaving, and so I didn't get the new positions posted or filled right away, which actually is fortunate because of the situation that we find ourselves in now. We will not be filling 2 of those positions in order to save about 157,000 for vacancy savings for our contribution to the budget shortfall. The next slide, I just wanted to highlight a couple of things that we've worked on in the last year, which tie into one of our main public safety goals of prosecute criminal cases in a timely and efficient manner in the best interests of justice, the best interests of the citizens of Billings, and the interests of victims of crime. So Ben, I'm sure you all know Ben Halverson, one of our prosecutors in the domestic violence unit. He assisted in drafting a bill that passed this legislative session, creating a new offense for endangering the welfare of children. That offense is committed when a person commits a partner or family member assault, an aggravated assault, assault with a weapon, strangulation of a partner or family member, when any of those offenses occur in the presence of a child under 18. The penalty for this offense is not less than 72 hours and up to a year in jail, and not less than $100 fine or up to $1,000, or both jail and a fine. So I think that this is a huge deal. I think this is a great achievement. I think this is an offense that's necessary, but it also has its challenges. And so these slides that I'm presenting, this one and a couple others, I look at them all as successes and accomplishments, but they all come with their own set of challenges. Montana does not track child witnesses of domestic violence, and so assessing the actual impact of this is difficult. It's a bit challenging. According to a 2023 National Library of Medicine study, approximately 10% of children are exposed to domestic violence on an annual basis, and 25% of children are exposed to at least one domestic violence event during their childhood. 2020 census data indicates that there are between 25,000 and 28,000 children in Billings. So correlating this data, it suggests that between 2,500 and 2,800 children in this community will experience domestic violence on an annual basis, with many more experiencing the same at least once in their childhood. Since this new statute is only punishable as a misdemeanor, it's reasonable to conclude that the city's prosecutors will assume the responsibility for a vast majority of these prosecutions. In addition to the increased criminal charges, our victim witness specialists will be serving a new class of victim, these children. We don't really know how intensive those kind of services will need to be, and clearly our victim witness specialists are not uniquely qualified. They don't have the kind of training to deal with child witnesses in certain ways. Generally, I think our VWs are certainly qualified and capable to do that, but we certainly don't want our office turning into a mini child advocacy center since we're not specifically qualified to do that kind of work. But our domestic violence unit is working with Katie and the DVI team to plan for this. And as long as these offenses are, if they continue to remain with the domestic violence offense, the underlying offense, that will mean that a vast majority of these cases will also go to the county attorney's office, because many domestic violence cases are felonies. And those are handled by the county attorney's office. So as long as the underlying offense remains with the underlying domestic violence case, then we'll be handling some, and the county attorney's office will be handling some. So this is something that we are anticipating some challenges, but feel that we have a plan to move forward and handle these effectively. So I think the things on this slide have been mentioned to you previously, but I think they're important and great achievements. So I wanted to mention it again. Our prosecutors are making really great headway in resolving cases much earlier now, since we have started sending 2 prosecutors to open court appearances on both Tuesdays and Thursdays of every week. Because of that, the prosecutors, they're present to discuss and negotiate plea offers in real time to those who are appearing for those scheduled appearances. Open court generally has, I'm told, about 100 people are scheduled for open court. About 35, anywhere from 30 to 40% actually show up. But of that percentage of people who appear, we are having about a 90% success rate in resolving those cases, with having the prosecutors there, talking to them, making plea offers in real time. So that's been a huge success. We're also making similar efforts during the in-custody arraignments, the jail arraignments. In fact, one of our prosecutors recently resolved 28 cases in 2 days during jail arraignments. So I think that was an excellent accomplishment. In conjunction with these efforts, our efforts, and in conjunction with the court's efforts, the court has come up with the master scheduling order. Failures to appear have gone down by 36%, according to the municipal court. We got sort of an informal email from them a couple weeks ago giving us that statistic, and we believe that this is due to the prosecutors making plea offers earlier in the process and resolving cases at those initial appearances, as well as a result of the master scheduling order, which took effect last year. I know that this has been discussed, you probably don't remember, but the master scheduling order reduces the number of appearances defendants must make, thus reducing the likelihood of their failure to appear in the future. When they don't appear for example, so they'll show up at the beginning, get all their dates, so they don't have a bunch of continued dates to show up for, when their calendar call is. If they don't show up for calendar call, the case is set for a bench trial instead of a jury trial. They lose their right to the jury trial. And those bench trials occur, those are usually held in absentia, because obviously the defendant's not there, and so a warrant isn't issued until the very end, if they're convicted. If they're convicted and sentenced, then a bench warrant then at that point is issued, instead of a million failure to appear warrants throughout the process. So I think these are all really great strides, but they do come with challenges as well. Given the increased time that the prosecutors are spending in open court, the increased time spent preparing for bench trials in absentia due to the new master scheduling order, and the increase in jury trials that they're setting, the misdemeanor prosecutors are experiencing less time at their desks to complete other tasks like warrant request reviews, reviewing revocations of bonds and conditions of release and sentencing, and other case-related tasks. So this this kind of time, this kind of result really shows the need for an additional prosecutor so that this reduced desk time can, if we get another prosecutor, which I believe we will here hopefully soon, the misdemeanor prosecutors will be able to have more time to actually actively work the cases to a higher level. And just so you know, I don't think I mentioned it, but I gotta go back to another slide. I mentioned the bench trials and jury trials, and in 2024, there were over 1,800 bench trials scheduled, and our prosecutors actually held 192 of them. And there were 177 jury trials scheduled, and the prosecutors actually had 6 jury trials. And so far this year in 2025, and keep in mind that there was no court held in February because the court was moving. So, so far this year, there have already been 6 jury trials and well over 100 bench trials. So our prosecutors are working very diligently in moving these cases forward. And the last thing I wanted to talk about, I think this is the last one, is the Family Justice Center. I know you guys have all heard about that. I think that this is one of the greatest accomplishments. I think that even though it's starting out small, I think it's going to be really big. And I just wanted to mention it because it goes, not only the services are being improved by having everybody together, but with our prosecutor, having 3 domestic violence prosecutors, it really enables them to invest the time intensive and emotionally demanding victim meetings that really need to occur. And our prosecutors are very committed that those are important meetings regardless of the outcome. But I do want to tell you a little bit of difference. So our violence against women grant, we have to do our quarterly reporting, but the fiscal year 23 report, that would have been October 1st to 2022 to September 30th, 2023, our prosecutors had 120 victim meetings. And for the same cycle, the next for fiscal year 24, our prosecutors had 203 victim meetings. And part of that is the increase is due to the fact that we have 3 prosecutors, but I also think that the Family Justice Center has really factored into that. Ben wanted me to relay a couple of other statistics about that. So of the 203 meetings, 115 of those resulted in an abuser pleading guilty to the underlying offense. So, and there was 44 of those meetings resulted in dismissals of the underlying charges. 14 are still pending. 20 ended in deferred prosecution agreements, and 10 resulted in referrals to the county attorney's office or the U.S. attorney's office. So, but most importantly, the 115 led to the abuser pleading guilty to the underlying offense. So I think that figure demonstrates that victim meetings do far more than serving victims. They actually result in criminal convictions at about a 56% success rate. So our DV prosecutors they uniformly believe that pursuing positive victim outcomes should be prioritized, even if doing so sacrifices a criminal conviction. Maintaining those relationships with victims is essential for continued trust in the criminal justice system. Those meetings are not always easy. They're emotionally draining. They can be really time consuming and occasionally can be confrontational. As you know, no 2 victims are the same. Some need repeated meetings that can last hours and some only take minutes. And Ben wanted me to mention that the story that Erin brought up last week at the work session, during her presentation, she mentioned a story about a shelter resident there had been charged with a couple of offenses, I think a partner assault and a order protection violation for victimizing the father of her children. And that was when Aaron approached Ben about speaking with the victim, which Ben and one of our victim witness specialists did. Then they met with the victim, the who turned out to be the actual abuser. They met and made the correct determinations, and it became apparent that the shelter resident was the actual victim and that the father of her children was manipulating the criminal and justice systems to his benefit. So after hearing the true victim's tragic and very credible account of the years of abuse she endured, Ben informed her on the spot that he was dismissing her criminal cases, and she literally cried with relief. And through that one meeting, they were able to achieve true justice for her. And since then, she's been able to reunite with her children. So I think that's just illustrative of how beneficial it is to have an office at the Family Justice Center, even though this leads to the challenges. It's a wonderful success, and it will only continue to improve services. But it too does not come without challenges. It's a significant commitment. We have prosecutors there every day, and our victim witnesses, we have there 3 days a week. This is a responsibility obligation that we share with the county, but unfortunately the county with their felony caseload just hasn't been able to dedicate that amount of time. They're short-staffed.
Gina, we have to move on to our
Okay.
public work. So
That's my last comment. It's a significant time constraint, and but our office is very committed. We assist with the county attorney's office and cover for them as we can.
okay, any
And that's all I have,
budget
unless you have any questions.
for Gina? Yes, Bernice.
Thank you, Mayor. Gina, I think Andy presented that, and I think you said you're not hiring 2 attorneys. So were you running short 4 attorneys all in 24? Is that correct?
They're not all attorney positions. 2 attorney positions and an administrative assistant.
Okay, so
and
you didn't have
a
those.
victim witness
You didn't have
specialist.
those all year in 24.
No, we didn't have a space. We had some people office sharing and working remote. Even with that, we just didn't have
Okay, so
anywhere
you're
to put
gonna
'em.
you're gonna hire 2, so that's gonna be an increase, which is gonna be helpful for that. So
Yeah.
one of the things I didn't see you mention, I mean, unless I missed it, the arraignment facility is coming online later this year. How is this budget gonna impact, and what kind of workload do you anticipate from that?
Well, that's a really good question. I don't have an answer for it because we're still not exactly clear how many of the municipal court defendants that are going to be appearing there, because it's not going to be all of them. It's going to be some subset, and we're not exactly clear on that. So we are kind of waiting to hear what the plan is, and we're going to just do our best with what we have and reevaluate and reassess if we need more resources, or if we can handle within what we currently have, the staffing level.
Okay, and then you mentioned that the police can do, I guess, file cases on certain things. Are they gonna be able to file cases on this new HB 91 type of cases as well?
They would, so generally, those are the kind of cases that are obviously going to come with the cases they are already filing direct, which are the partner assault, the DV type of cases. So yes, I believe that that endangering offense would generally come with those kinds of offenses that they could direct file.
So of the 150 cases that you saw last year, you're probably gonna see that probably this year, and
We
then you're gonna
could.
have to have that additional child type of witness
Y-
interaction. Is that
Yeah,
correct?
yes, if there are children present, that would be an additional offense tagged on.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, nothing else? Councilmember Askew?
Yeah, this one's probably for Andy, who's not paying attention. On the budget, as I look at the budgeted revenue side of things, there's a line item for intergovernmental and there's a line item for transfer in. I presume that the transfer in is entitlement share. But can you explain what those two are? I guess
Sure.
maybe that's my
So
question.
the majority of the city attorney legal budget is in the general fund. However, they do get some grant funds, and those are accounted for separately. So the slide or the chart you're looking at takes all the revenue and expenditure for the legal department and puts it, here's the revenue they're bringing in, the intergovernmental, that's VOCA and VAWA are the two grants they get, but then we have a local match share. So we have a separate fund where we pay for Ben's salary and some of his team, and the grant funds come in there. They don't cover 100% of that, so then we transfer from the general fund, legal department, into that to make up the local match. So it shows up as a transfer in the grant fund. Does that make sense?
Yeah, just make sure that I'm clear because I'm dense. So the intergovernmental and the transfer in are basically the VOCA VAWA is the intergovernmental, and then the transfer in is our match requirement for those. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. If that's the end of our legal, thank you very much, Gina. We will move on to Public Works. I guess Debbie and Jennifer are gonna tag team this. And reminder, council, for anybody who did not see it, Jennifer sent us this presentation over the weekend. Should be in your emails, or I don't know if it's this presentation, but
Debbie just sent you.
oh, okay. Okay, the overview came over the weekend, and then Debbie sent the slides just an hour or two ago.
A lot of slides, you'll have to talk fast. A lot of slides, you'll have to talk fast.
So I heard Gina say that she was told to make it brief. We weren't told that. So you look really worried.
It is to what the rate adjustments will be.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so we are getting started. Anyway, this is Public Works, and I'm going to introduce everybody first. Everybody that's left. We have 3 of 6 division managers turning over this year. So, this month, actually. So you guys know Louis Ingalls, who is the utility engineer. He's over the water plant and the wastewater plant. You know, Derek, who is the street traffic superintendent. And then Sherry Armstrong is new, kind of new to us. She was our lab supervisor for about 2 months before we tagged her to be our new environmental affairs manager. So we're very excited to have her on. Kyle did take a job elsewhere, and Scott and Boris both retired. So we have a lot of new things happening, and I'm just going to move on because you guys have seen some of our good pictures before. Okay. Everybody's got it in front of you, so I think we'll just keep talking while Andy figures out why it will not share. So Public Works has, I'm going to do a really quick overview, give you guys some ideas to maybe look at on your own because you have the presentation, and then Jennifer will talk about numbers. So we're up to about 297 full-time staff and just over 7.7 billion in assets. Oh, we're starting now. So again, it's a pretty large group. So when we talk through some of this, just keep in mind that it's a lot of things being done. I am not going to go into, it's the 4th slide, 5th, sorry. I'm not going to read all of these. I did send this out, and of course it's on mayor and council, so it's public, but I wanted to point out a couple of things. There were no large road projects this year. You'll see a lot of these were sidewalks, traffic calming, a lot of pedestrian improvements, safe routes to school. The reason for that is we're kind of saving up money. Both Rimrock and Grand are huge projects, 25 million and about 15 million. So those are large projects, so we're kind of saving our money this year and working on those projects coming up here. So the next page is some water projects. Again, not going to read all these, but I would point out that there's a lot of replacements on here again this year, and we are working on Zone 4. Some of you are familiar with the letter that we've sent out to Zone 4 a couple of times saying your pressures are low because you're using an awful lot of water. So this will help that situation. And then the next one, I will point out two that are pretty interesting numbers here. The lift stations, we reduced our electrical callouts by over 50%. I'm just going to highlight a couple things like this because we continue to talk about being more efficient and using our funds better. That's one of them that we do have a lot of electrical callouts, just those lift stations in the middle of the night, whenever that happens. And now because of what we've done here, we're able to reduce those callouts.
Jennifer, I'm sorry, Debbie, real quick. Jennifer, can we dump the side just so the presentation will get bigger? I'm sorry.
This thing.
What's an electrical call out?
There we are. An electrical call out is when our lift station goes down, power, or we're just not getting the pumps to work. And so we have to have our electricians respond to that in the middle of the night or weekends or whatever. So it's on off hours when we have an issue. The other one that I wanted to point out on this one is the landfill gas compliance. We talked about that last year. EPA put air quality regulations in place for the city of Billings. We had a very tight time frame to meet that, and we did meet it. So we are in compliance. And the West End project is one that we've talked a lot about. Just give you a quick update. We are on schedule and on budget with that water plant. We're working on all the components of this. Again, some pretty big things have happened this year. We are to the point, May 27th, we'll have the agreement with Knife River in front of you for that consideration, and then we'll be able to move along with moving dirt in June. We're going to start those reservoirs. So that's coming right up as long as everything goes well on the May 27th council meeting. And then we did get a diversion structure grant from FEMA. That was due to the flooding a couple of years ago, so we are seeing about $4 million on that grant. Overall, we've talked about this in budget and finance, but we are right at budget on this project. The fact that we put this in place before COVID, this $150 million, and we said we're going to hit it, somehow we are right there. So we're hoping everything goes well. So far, it is going well. We're managing it tightly and hope to be able to come in on budget on that project.
And Debbie, I'd just like to add that that's not accidental. I mean, right, these two and their teams have worked tirelessly. So as unpleasant as it is, as we talk about, and it gets brought up relative to utility bills, this $155 million project coming in at the same price it was pre-COVID didn't happen by accident. This team, Debbie's team, they have worked tirelessly to come up firing groups that didn't meet the standard. So we do fire people who don't live up to their expectations, changing horses, while changing the innovative ways that they get water to the plant. That all could have been, we could have avoided all that and came to this council and this community over the past 5 and 6 years talking about the project being 175 million, 190 million, $200 million. But that's not what happened. So I just don't want, I think that's lost because we don't talk about it. So thank you for that work.
Yep.
Councilor Boyette has a question.
So I was out there yesterday and I saw that we are moving dirt on the north side of Hesper. It looks like a big berm in the middle of this, where the pond's going to be. Is that right?
Right. So the last contract amendment that you approved was to do clearing and grubbing and then some dewatering. That's what they're doing. If we get the next contract amendment approved next Monday, Tuesday, we'll actually start picking up dirt and taking it over to the next site. So we'll be starting to dig. Yep.
Debbie, you mentioned the $4 million FEMA diversion structure grant. The federal government's been clawing back some of these grants. Any chance of losing those?
We got a letter today telling us that we were approved for the first phase. So we kind of have been waiting and wondering, but today we got a letter saying the first phase is good to go.
So get it and spend it
Yes.
ASAP, I would say, as quickly as
Absolutely.
possible. Go ahead.
And then this slide just has, the last ones were separated kind of by the service area. I just wanted to point out a couple of things that happened, showing where our funds went in the last year. It's lost sometimes, but we provide essential services to this entire city every day, 24/7, 365. You turn on your tap, you flush your toilet, your garbage gets picked up, there's no snow. I think there's so much happening that people forget. It takes a lot to keep a city like this and those essential services. So just want to one shout out to the everybody working hard on that. We started that two-way conversion project. I know those of you coming to City Hall noticed that project. We are working on the storm utility development, and we had a significant snow year. And I think most of you can remember February. It was rough. We had people working around the clock for that month, pretty much across the board on our department. So, and the last one I put on here is just these little things that we continue to do. Instead of digging up leaks in our sewer system, we're starting to do point repairs inside the pipe. So we basically send like a balloon down and we fix it from the inside. We're not digging, we're not replacing pipe, we're not inconveniencing the public. Little things like this that happen every day is just a huge testament to the innovative work that is being done. And that's all I'm going to do on bragging about the group. Community engagement, we continue to try to get out there and talk to people, find out what people want, answer questions. And this list will just give you where we've been and what we've done. And now Jennifer's going to do numbers.
We'll start here with the overall budget summary for Public Works. This year we have 172.1-ish in budgeted expenses. It's actually a decrease of $66 million, and we'll get into those decreases in the next few slides. And then we have $204.8 million of budgeted revenues, a $9 million increase. So we break our expenses down into these 5 categories. We're a little bit different than every other department in the city, and that the majority for us is capital. I always add the capital and the debt service numbers together because debt service is for capital projects. So we have 47% of our expenses for FY26 are going towards capital. And then our next category that's the largest is O&M, which is 34% or about $59.4 million. Personnel for us is only 18%, $31.3 million. And then the last category is interfund transfers at $1.5 million. Revenues are shown here. Largest for us in Public Works are always our charges for services. This year, $116.3 million, 57% of our revenues. And charges for services are your solid waste, water, wastewater, storm fees, as well as some internal charges for services. The next largest category this year is actually debt proceeds at 28%, $56 million. So we always have sidewalk and SID sale of bonds in there, but this year we also have about $12 million for a storm bond issue, and then $40 million for the second bond issue for the West End project. We did the first $70 million last year, and we held off on doing all of it so that we could save on some interest expenses until we actually need that money. We also have $20.4 million in special assessments that are budgeted for FY26. Our special assessments now are just street maintenance districts, street light districts, and encroachment fees. And then we're budgeting interest earnings at $5.5 million. Intergovernmental is 5.3. The majority of that is gas tax funding. And then we have miscellaneous there that's $500,000. That is a developer contribution or several developer contributions towards the Rimrock Road project. We collect those when developments come in based on what the estimated impact is at that time. So we'll be able to use some of that money on Rimrock. And then we round it out with licenses and permits for $235,000. This slide shows you each fund that we have. I think there's 13 shown here. and their expenses and revenues. You'll see that yellow is either we are accumulating cash or we are using up cash. So for us, because we have such a large capital component, we do 5-year financial plans and cash flows. And we, in order to not increase and decrease our rates constantly, we try to smooth that out by planning in advance. So there are some years where we are spending down some of our money and some years where we are accumulating money. The biggest one you see there is in the water fund, where we are accumulating cash in FY26, but that's a little bit of misleading because what we're actually doing is selling those bonds in 26, but the expenses are in our FY25 budget, so that's why it's shown that way. And then the changes in the FY26 expenses are shown here, and they're kind of detailed in the next few slides, but personnel increases by 3.5 million. O&M is another 3.5 million. Capital is the big decrease for us, 73.8 million, again, because the West End project was in FY25. Debt service is about the same. Interfund transfers goes up by 425,000. Inflation is shown here, and I'm not going to go over this in detail. You've seen this before. Just a reminder that whenever we don't increase our rates by inflation, then service levels go down. Back in those 21, 22, there was no way we could increase rates to keep up with inflation. You see that in city services where we're just not able to do as much painting, different things like that. Definitely affects our service level when we can't increase with inflation. So for personnel changes, a couple things really added to the 3.5 million. So Public Works did not put any COLA increases in our FY25 budget due to negotiations. So for our FY26 budget, we are seeing the impact of the 12% rate increase that equipment operators got last year, plus the 4% that everyone will get this year. So we point out the 12% for equipment operators just because they are 49% of our employees. A much needed increase that they got last year. We are able to hire and retain these employees now where we were losing them right and left before. So we're grateful that they got this increase, but it's why you're seeing the large increase now. We are also asking though for 8 additional employees. One was just a very late add, so we had 7 actually in our proposed budget. But 5 are for storm, 1 is for yard waste in solid waste, and 1 is a mechanic at the landfill, and then a wastewater tech for a total of about $523,000. If we received, if we were able to get all 8 of these, it would bring our total FTEs to 297.
Jennifer, it looks like what you're presenting there versus what was in Andy's presentation to start are different numbers relative to the FTE FTE proposal. I'm trying to pull Andy's back up here. In Andy's presentation, there's 3 for stormwater, 1 in solid waste, and 1 in admin. There's only 5. There were 7 total, but 2 were in police.
We can go back and look at those. This is what we have in the one that we sent over, the view that we sent and the numbers that we've got, but we'll go back and make sure we match up with his.
Okay.
And all but the last one that we added are in our proposed budget. So it's included in the numbers.
Okay.
And then can we just clarify, and I apologize, I'm thinking of was it in this current fiscal year where we at the end added the FTE related to the utility, the IT position?
We did, it's in the IT budget, so it's in our cost allocations.
Okay, I'm sorry, it's on the IT side, sorry.
So just to give you an idea of what we're asking for, we're needing 5 people in street traffic to start working on stormwater Maintenance, these are cleaning inlets, jets, jetting, the storm drains, et cetera. And this was in the storm utility program to get us to where we need to be there. And then we're asking for a wastewater tech at the wastewater treatment plant. So that, it was recommended that we add that a year ago when we added some nutrient processes, but we added another one this last year. We didn't add the employee at that time, but we added another nutrient process. We're now at the point where we need that person, so we're asking for it in this year. And then in solid waste, we have the black containers, as you know, and the green containers. So if you look at each of those different routes, the green containers, where we have 5 actual dedicated routes right now, are supposed to be picking up 1,250 containers a day, which is not possible to do that in a day and go to the landfill. We have actually shifted a route over from the black containers to the green containers to help out temporarily, but now we're of course short on the black container route side. So we are asking for a person in solid waste. Otherwise, we will be actually just continuing to do this on overtime because we have to pick up the containers no matter what. And then the last one, this was our very late ad, but we're asking for a mechanic at the landfill, and this is not in our budget numbers. It's approximately $86,000 is what it would cost us. We do not have a mechanic at the landfill now, but we're using a lot of contracted services for mechanic services. So we will save at least what we spend, probably much more, if we get this position. And these are just a list of some of the major O&M increases that we had. BOC rent went up by about $75,000, and that's rent for the divisions there, solid waste and street traffic. We had cost allocation increases of a little over $200,000, but that does include the IT person for Public Works. Heat tape markings increase of $30,000. And then we just have a general $560,000 increase for inflationary increases for materials and supplies. That's asphalt, chemicals, and some meter supplies, some piping, things like that. And then the stormwater program increases of about $1.3 million are to start implementing the next phase of the stormwater program, where we are starting to contract for some of these repair services to get going on the deferred maintenance side. Vehicle parts and labors is kind of an inflationary increase there too, but we separated it out just because of the very large number, but it's almost $500,000 that we're increasing our vehicle parts and labor this year. But we would decrease it by the $86,000 if the mechanic is approved. And then the last one there is just rehabs of one of the filters at the water plant.
And Jennifer, can we just go back to the previous slide real quick? I just want to be clear, and goes to conversation Debbie and I had late last week. So if I understand it right, it's a very late additional FTE, but the cost is not an increase. The cost is already, we think we're going to save money, but we're not showing us savings yet until we experience it. That in looking at how much money we're spending on contract mechanic work, that's the swap. So it shows as an additional FTE, but it does not show as an additional cost because it's money we're already spending. We do believe we'll be able to show us significant savings this upcoming year.
So I think you've all seen this slide before, but just to point out some of the changes that were approved in our capital improvement program. The traffic calming program was new and we started it low. I think the first year was $50,000 and then we're increasing it by $50,000 a year so that we could figure out how to prioritize those projects. And then the pipe replacements and the paver project are both increasing by 10% a year to get us to the level that we need to get to the right level of service. You can see there the pipe replacement chart shows that we will be at about 153 years of pipe replacement. So we are expecting our pipe to last 153 years by the time we get through FY26, which is better than the 200 years that we started out with. So we're getting closer to that 100-year mark that we're trying for. And then I'm not going to go through all the capital projects. These were, of course, in the CIP. Just point out a couple things here. There are 2 storm drain projects here totaling about $5 million, plus we have some annual projects. And just wanted to remind council that prior to you passing the program that you did last year and then have showed support for this year, we had $2 million total for storm capital. So we're really seeing the benefits there of being able to get going on some of these needed storm projects. We also, of course, have the Rimrock Road project for $10 million. That's 54th to 62nd. And then we're starting a couple design. If anyone's been on Monad Road, Daniels to Moore Lane, you know that piece is badly needed. So we're starting to design this year. Construction will be next year. The Grand Avenue project is a state project. That money in there for this year is design and for right-of-way. It really depends a little bit on the state for that timing though. And then 3, I don't want to leave Lewis out here, so 3 very exciting water and wastewater projects there at the bottom with some scouring lines and digester gas replacements. So you can see here our annual programs. Again, I'm not going to go through them, but the majority of what we do is really just to maintain what we have. You just don't see in FY26 much for growth. It's really just maintaining what we have to stay steady. And fees, we were not planning on going in depth with you. We've presented to the Budget and Finance Committee twice, the full council once, and then next Tuesday it will be at council for a public hearing. So we will go through it all again in depth at that point. Tonight we'll just say that the recommendation from the Budget and Finance Committee was 0% residential increase. When we presented to the Public Works Board, the recommendation was to increase according to our existing plans and levels of services. Then when we presented to the whole council, they went along with the Budget and Finance Committee recommendation of a 0% residential increase, and that is what we'll be presenting next Tuesday when we're here. And this slide just shows you the impact there, and Andy had it in his also. The $2.13 a month is just from the storm increase. Everything else for a residential customer would be $0.
So I'll hit on some challenges. So this is really, you know, besides the capital and O&M that Jennifer talked about, where we're going to spend a lot of our time this year. Regulations are always a big part of our world. So wastewater, water, landfill, and stormwater, there's a lot of work that goes into that. I use wastewater as a great example when we get in on the beginning. If EPA goes the direction we think they might go, DEQ and EPA with wastewater into the Yellowstone River, we'd be looking at a $100 million project. Lewis has been on the ground floor leading the charge on getting us to a situation where I think we may have almost no cost because of the science that they're doing now. So we put these things here because we want to avoid a $100 million charge here in the next couple of years. So these regulations are something, and Sherry doesn't know, but we're going to lean really heavily on her coming up here in the next couple of years. There's a lot you can do when you get involved early, and that's what we continue to do, is try to kind of guide some of those regulatory decisions as best as we can. The Heights Water District, I think you have all
Debbie,
heard.
if I can jump in just on that wastewater and the nutrient stuff. I mean, again, this is one of those things I think we, as professionals, we just do our job, and that's our job. But I think your engagement, and Lewis in particular's engagement in that nutrient standards group for a decade now or more has really led to some serious avoided costs for our community. And I mean, Lewis and I spent an afternoon having pancakes with the governor's team as those rules were about to come out, and then the next day they didn't come out. Some of that probably had to do with that meeting that we had and that frank conversation we had with the governor's office on impacts to our city. But again, that effort and dedication is something that as professionals we just do our job, and our job is to do that work and then we achieve our task, we move on to the next one. We don't talk about the benefit that that has had to our taxpayers and our ratepayers. That $100 million project is, I mean, it really is essentially building a treatment plant on the end of our treatment plant. And that is something that I think we've avoided, at least for now. But that level of engagement and leadership really shown by Billings in that working group has paid off, not just for our citizens, but for a lot of people in the state of Montana as well. So thank you for that, and thank you for that continued dedication.
Okay. Sure.
On this Heights Water District, why did it take so long to find that there was a leak? There was a leak and the amount of water.
So we don't maintain the Heights Water District. We don't operate it. And so when it leaves
That
the
a
Walter.
Heights Water District
Yep.
issue?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. So we checked our meters several times because that's the point we know. So we did attempt to, do as much as we could to help them find that leak.
The other,
So if, just a quick question then. So if it was consolidated, that probably would have been found a lot faster or whatever.
I'm not sure how to.
I'll dive into that and
Okay,
say
Chris.
maybe, maybe not. I mean, I've worked for 30 years in this area. Sometimes the water leak is obvious. It comes right up and someone's got a flood in their front yard or there's a crack in a street. Other times it manages to create a sinkhole or go down and you don't know where that leak is until it finally shows up. So I think we would need to be careful to say, oh, we would have found that quicker. We may have, but I've seen it take time in the past. We were certainly able to tell them, yes, you're going through a lot more water. You are using a lot more water. The water's going somewhere between their sales and what was going through the system.
Thank you.
I would just add, in this case, the water went into a storm drain. I think that was why it wasn't found. They were finding water in storm drains, so it was finding its way to somewhere. A little hard to find, but yeah.
And David, I just want to second what Councilman Rasmussen said on behalf of the state of Montana. The city of Billings has fronted a lot of those costs and leadership in the nutrient standards for, as you said, almost 10 years. So we've been paying out those consultant fees, been paying, or just other communities have been chipping in as well. But we've really led that and picked up the lion's share of it, and that was appreciated by the league as well. And so it has certainly saved those other communities a lot of money as well. It's been a team effort. So thank you for your leadership and Lewis's on all of that. But go ahead.
Absolutely. Mayor, I want to say one more thing about the wastewater, because I think they do, like you say, a good job, but I think the education piece has been really good as well, because anything that goes down the sink, they have to pull out. And so it's really important that we as a community, good education in our schools. I'm actually, I don't like the garbage disposals because all that does is help people put things down into the sink that has to be pulled out. There's things that I think that we as a city should look at to encourage our citizens to actually keep that stuff from going down the sink. Simple as putting a screen in your drain will help a lot of that, but I think that that's something that we as a community can help keep our own costs down. And with the assistance of Public Works, just letting us be aware of what it is that's going to help run that plant better. Thank you.
Right. So Heights Water District, we are working on that consolidation study. Honestly, we've found some interesting information already, so we'll see where that goes. I wouldn't bet on one way or another yet, but it's been interesting. The stormwater program implementation, Jennifer touched on it. You all know it. You've given us the resources we need. Now we need to go do something with that. And so we're going to try to use those resources effectively and make a difference. The rain that we've had the last few days has just helped us find some more of those problem spots. Lead services, community development was a great help here. I think most of you probably remember when they brought the plan in, there is $200,000 to help replace lead services. We have 200 in the system. We do not have a funding plan for that yet. It's a challenge. I think it's a conversation we need to have. if we can get CDBG funds to help those citizens replace those lead services from their private property line into their houses, that will be a great step toward getting some of these replaced. So for now, that is the plan, and then we'll probably have to talk about some of the other areas that are not in CDBG eligible areas. Paved alleys. We talked about this last year. We don't have a solution yet. As you know, our paver program, we already struggled to get our main streets maintained at the level we want to maintain them at. We certainly don't want to add paved alleys into it and lose ground on that. We're doing some work with Derek's group this year. They're going to start paving some of these alleys and seeing how long it takes them, what they can do to extend the life of these alleys without spending a lot of time and money on them, but not having to take them back to gravel, which we've had to do to a couple of alleys because we just couldn't maintain them and we had to take them back to gravel. So Derek's got a crew that's working on that. And once we get some of the data back as to what it takes, we'll be able to formulate a better plan this next year as to how we're going to deal with paved alleys.
And a big thank you there, right? When we moved from the old city hall to the new city hall, the alley was in horrendous shape behind this building. And not only was it better for driving it, I'm told also all those potholes that the water was next to the foundations of these buildings and other things in the areas, there's more impact than just the inconvenience of driving on potholed alleys, especially in the downtown when there are foundations right up against right of way. So I would hope next year when we talk about streets, somewhere we got to come up with some funding to help avoid those long-term costs. So thank you for the work that's done.
Deb, just one quick question. Are you going to still blade the alleys?
The gravel alleys, yes, we will still have the same program, blading alleys. The paved alleys, we're going to try to figure out how to maintain those.
Okay,
better.
I've been getting some calls on that, especially with the rain.
Yeah,
so.
the rain makes those alleys really tough.
Okay.
Yep. So
thank you.
Derek, I believe we have all our blades out working.
Thank you.
Okay, the transportation plan and system development fee for transportation, we've talked about this at a work session relatively recently, so I won't go into that. But we do need to start looking at that system development fee, impact fee for transportation. So we're going to try to get that looked at, moved along further this next year. Leadership, I mentioned at the beginning, with this much turnover, half of our leadership staff is turning over due to retirements and one non-retirement. And so we've got a learning curve. I think we got a lot of opportunity, and but it also takes us a while to kind of hit our stride here. So we're looking forward to it, but also it'll be an interesting year. I think I've got a couple more here. MDT agreements and policies. We have been working with MDT for a long time. I think this Grand Avenue is the first big step we've seen where we get those funds directly. So that's a huge project. If we were just saying MDT go do the project, I think more of our urban funds would actually go toward that project. So we're really excited that we're taking this really big step. We could have started on a smaller project, but we are not. We're starting on a $25 million project. But this is huge. This is huge to be getting those funds directly to our community, managed by us. And so there's some other things in play that we've been talking about, maintenance agreements, where we can maybe sweep Montana Avenue, sweep 27th, sweep some of these streets that don't get swept very often. So we're working with MDT on a lot of those agreements, and we'll see if we can make headway on some of those this year.
And again, Debbie, not to understate that, Grand Avenue in particular, when the state comes in and does these projects, I mean, the cost increase to the taxpayers, not just Billings taxpayers, the statewide taxpayers, these projects cost anywhere from 30 to 40% more when the state runs these projects. So when we run these things locally, more efficiently, more effectively, faster, and we get the dollars into the dirt quicker, we're able to capitalize on the value of that dollar today. And this is a huge step. I'm glad we're doing it on Grand Avenue, even though it's a huge project, but like this is a 30 to 40% savings on that, what, $20-some million project. And again, that, without leaning into that, and it's not been, it's been uncomfortable as I've been parts of those conversations for MDT and for the city. It's a huge step forward in Billings leading the way on this type of cooperation and coordination, intergovernmental, interagency coordination for MDT to turn over these projects, which they are reluctant to ever do. So this is, again, is a huge savings to the taxpayers, both of Billings and of the state of Montana.
Asset management and GIS, you have heard this every year for a long time. This is our commitment. We are making a final push to get these two projects to the point where they are just maintenance. We're just going to put them in, be using them every day. So we said it publicly. We've got a slide. We're going to make the final push and get those done. And I think, oh, I've got one more. Cardboard. We talked about this also when we talked about at the Budget and Finance Committee. We have to decide what we're going to do with cardboard. We're going to make a big push publicly this year, try to encourage people to get that cardboard out, do our best to make sure we're consistently collecting that. And the more we can do that and the more we can divert from our landfill, the better we'll be between the green waste, the cardboard, and anything else that we can eventually get out of the landfill. So we're going to make a big push, and then at the end of the year, we'll come and talk to you all about what we saw and maybe make some decisions at the end of the year. And that is our presentation. Any questions?
Very good. Thank you very much. Questions? Councilmember Boyette?
Debbie, I get calls all the time about Grand Avenue. Can you tell us, the public, what's going to happen this year, if any, on Grand Avenue between Shiloh and 62nd?
So we did add the signal last year. I think you probably saw that. I think there's a couple of small turn lanes going in this year that are associated with some developments, but generally what we're doing this year is we're working on acquiring right-of-way, doing the environmental documents and designing. So they won't see a lot yet.
Councilmember Nice?
Thank you, Mayor. I think you mentioned you're going to have a mechanic, additional mechanic at the waste plant. Is that correct? No, at the solid waste.
At the landfill, we're looking
Landfill,
for a mechanic, yes.
So how many mechanics do you have for the landfill now?
None.
Okay, so and maybe this was a contracted service, but I saw a truck down the other day. They came out, they fixed it, and then went off. So is that what you're talking about? Those are the contracted services
Right.
that are doing that? Okay. So Chris, you mentioned that the $86,000, that's going to cover the cost because we're going to cut the budget down. So does that $86,000 include all the benefits, all the equipment, the trucks, all that kind of stuff to get that started, tools, things like that up and running, and then that's what we're going to be saved, or is this going to be actually more than $86,000 to get this person up and running in the?
So the $86,000 is for wages and benefits. We already have the full shop at the landfill, the tools, everything in place. And then we're working on getting a kind of a hand-me-down truck that will be used both for the mechanic and for another part of the landfill.
Okay, great, thank you.
Very good. Any other questions for Debbie or Jennifer or for others? Councilmember Absaliter?
Just a general comment, and we've been living under this cloud of the billing system stuff for over a year now, and I think one of the things that we don't do a very good job of, and it's partly council's responsibility as well, is communicating what Public Works does every day and the successes that equate to savings for our taxpayers. And that's something that we've got to do a better job of going forward. So when we do hit these bumps in the road and these parts where we derail a little bit with some missteps, that we're not completely discounting all of the good work that has been done over the years by the people that do this every day. And we're also not losing the credibility in this community of the professionals that we've hired to do these jobs. And we have a responsibility also to talk about the successes of Public Works in particular because that directly relates to the rates. What Debbie talked about with, just nutrient standards alone, $100 million wastewater plant improvement, the impact that that has on everybody's sewer rates is pretty tremendous. And that's just the one. The cost savings and the innovation and holding the line on the West End water treatment plant budget is another giant success directly attributable to putting money in the pockets of our ratepayers and the citizens of this community. And we have just not done justice to the successes and championing the successes of the Public Works Department. And, part of that's on the administrative team, and a big part of that's also on the council, because we just don't talk about that stuff. And I'm as guilty as anybody of not talking about the things that we have done well and focusing on the things that we have not done well. But we've got to do a better job of acknowledging and pushing the successes and where we're actually saving money, because especially as we're talking about budget cuts and the challenges associated with meeting budgets and keeping rates flat and understanding the economic challenges of our constituents, they don't know the other parts unless we tell them. And we have got to do a better job as we start to work to rebuild the credibility of the city coming out of this billing issue, of championing those things as how our professionals are working to save them money every day while they're still providing service. And that's something I think we've got to commit to as council, to talking about more and presenting that more and putting that out in front during our work sessions, even in the general comment periods where we are having these successes or saving money on projects. We've got to do a better job of communicating that to the public so they don't just hear about the problems. We only talk about the problems because that's what makes it to our desk, but we are not doing our team service in not talking about their successes as well.
Well, given that challenge, I'll tell the story of a county resident who was complaining to me over the weekend what it was costing them to pay for a private hauler for their trash. And we did a little math and realized just how much cheaper Billings trash hauling is. And virtually all of our utility rates coming out of Public Works are, when measured against a statewide competition, so to speak, are consistently in the bottom half of cost. And so that's where the rubber really hits the road. And so we can be proud of that. And, we don't want to be at the very bottom of that. We don't want to be at the top of that. But there's a sweet spot in there, and I think we usually occupy that. So thank you for that, reminding that of us, of all of that, Councilmember Asplighter. We agree wholeheartedly. So very good. Thank you. I'm not seeing any other questions up. The hour is late. Thank you to the team. You guys are doing a great job. Keep it up. And we'll look forward as we go forward. So we'll open up for public comment on item number 2. You've heard a lot. If there's anybody still around, appreciate your patience. Is there anybody that would like to comment on this item? If so, please go to the podium. I just ask you keep your comments to 3 minutes. Tell us your name and address.
Nothing or mark upon that. Just remember the Memorial Day parade that the Downtown Rotary Club is hosting on Saturday. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anything else? I don't see anything, so we'll conclude the public comment on item number 2. Chris, anything of future agenda items?
Reminder, we're here again tomorrow night with budgets, and then 2 weeks from now, normal work session schedule, a Monday and Tuesday again. And then next week, Memorial Day, so we're Tuesday, not Monday. So just pay attention to the calendars.
Do we have a budget meeting Wednesday? Thank you.
Very good. Any items of council discussion? Any other public comment on non-agenda items? Amy.
My name is Amy Aguirre. I'm Ward 3 resident. I just want to elaborate a little bit more again on Councilmember Aspenleiter's message to council. I'm loving this culture of thank you and recognition among staff and among the work that is being provided to our community. That's what makes our community so great and welcoming. I love seeing Chris defending his staff and elaborating further on the hard work that they're putting in, and I think that's what a great boss will do. But overall, this general culture of recognition and thank you instead of finger pointing and instead of power plays. I hope to see more of that in the future. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Any other public comment on non-agenda items? No one's coming forward. We'll close that public comment period, and with that, we are adjourned. Thanks, everybody. And it's not after 9 o'clock.